Happy holidays, everybody. Hey guys, Caleb here from CDBS Studios, and welcome to my final video of 2025. Yes, in case you guys don't know, I'm going to be taking a 2 week break in order to spend some time with my family for Christmas, and also just to give myself a little bit of a buffer in the next. A little bit of a buffer for the new year because my first video for next year is going to be a little bit of a beefy video, so I do need a little extra time to get that ready for you guys. So I thought I would treat you guys to a long video to hold you over for my 2 week break over the course of the holidays. And there's one thing that I've been asked to rank for almost a year now. Almost a year ago now when I made that Pixar video. Holy, I didn't realize it was so long ago. But after I made that video, and then shortly after I made the DreamWorks ranking earlier this year, I got a couple DMs from people that said that I should rank the Disney animated films. And I wasn't really super up to the idea as I'm kind of not super big on Disney the Corporation right now. Like, yes, I'm still going to watch every new MCU movie, and of course I'll occasionally tune into the Disney company and see what they do with some of their failing brands like Star Wars and that. But I just wasn't super motivated to talk about the Disney films and more or less make Disney look good, as I was not super huge on them for a long time. And then I ranted about the Disney live action remakes this summer when I made the live action remake ranking, and I ended up getting more DMs because of people talking of me talking about the live action remakes. A lot of people wondered what I thought of the original movies. So that brings us to today's video. Today I'm finally following up those DMs, and I'm going to be ranking all 64 Disney animated films from the worst to the best. And I want to stress this enough. What I am ranking today is the Disney animated movies that came from the main animation studio. The Disney Walt Disney Animation Pictures did not make those direct to DVD sequels, any of the Disney Channel movies, any of the other like straight to streaming movies. None of that stuff will be included. It'll be the 64 official Disney movies. That is what I'm covering in this video. And I'm going to be ranking them from the worst to the best. And this is going to definitely be one of my longer videos. So hope you guys are happy and happy holidays. And now let's go ahead and rank all 64 Disney animated movies. Guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but for the first time in any of my ranking videos, we actually have a tie for the bottom slot. And it is not a 1 or 2 movie tie. It is in fact a 5-way tie for last place. Yes, you heard me correctly. There are 5 movies that I think are equally as bad, and I genuinely had a hard time figuring out which ones I think are good and which ones I think are worse in order to create a coherent ranking. And the 5 movies tied for the last place and my least favorite Disney animated films is gonna go to the package films. Yes, a little bit of a history lesson for those of you that don't know. Back in the early 1940s, during the events of World War II, Disney didn't really have the staff or the money to make the animated movies that they were traditionally making up to that point, like Cinderella and Pinocchio. So instead, what they did in order to keep the company afloat during this rough time period was they made a bunch of package films that they ended up making a bunch of package films that were basically consisted of 2 to 3 shorts that then got slapped together and put in theaters so that they could keep the company afloat. And yeah, all these movies are bad. And I want to stress this before I go talk about each one individually, is that I am not opposed to package movies that tell multiple stories. Many people will know if they go to my Letterboxd account that Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas is one of my favorite Christmas movies, and that's a package film, but it at least has good shorts, and all the shorts are tied together by some theme. These shorts are more or less just 3 shorts that barely have anything to do with each other, and I generally had a hard time figuring out which short was lower than the other. So I guess it's time for a mini ranking, but just know that I pretty much feel the exact same about every single one of these movies. So technically, number 64, my least favorite Disney animated film, is gonna go to the package film Fun and Fancy Free. This is just one of the worst package films I've ever seen in my entire life, as this movie only consists of 2 shorts, keep in mind, but it feels like those shorts go on for literally forever. As the first short we cover in this movie is a story about Bongo the bear, who is this circus bear who escapes and starts living in the forest, and he ends up meeting a girl. He ends up having a huge battle with this big bear. It's what you would expect from a traditional animated movie, but this short is just boring. It's like 40 minutes for some reason, and I don't understand why it's 40 minutes, because you totally could have cut out like 15 minutes from this thing and it would not change. There's a very questionable song in this short about slapping your significant other to tell them that you like them, and there's just so much wrong with this short that I can't enjoy it. And yeah. And then we have the second short, which is Mickey and the Beanstalk, which you would inherently think, oh, that's gotta be good, right? I mean, it's Mickey and the Beanstalk, right? Well, the problem with that short is Jiminy Cricket was our narrator for the Bongo the Bear story. And he was a very respectful narrator by letting us experience the short and kind of being a respectful narrator. But it just, I guess Disney didn't want to pay the voice actor to continue voicing Jiminy Cricket for the second half of this film. So instead, the movie ships us off to this birthday party where we meet these 2 ventriloquist dummies who then make these unfunny, stupid jokes throughout the entirety of Mickey and the Beanstalk, to the point where I can't even enjoy Mickey and the Beanstalk because of these 2 ventriloquist dummies. This is just a movie that I think there's really like 0 things right with it. It constantly makes me angry. I don't really like it, and it's the worst of the package films, and it's the worst of the entire Disney catalog of movies. The next short we have up is going to go to Melody Time. Melody Time is one of the classic Disney shorts. I don't really remember a lot that happens in it, to be honest with you guys. It's got some enjoyable shorts in it that are nice. Like there's this cowboy short that I really enjoyed, and there's some other shorts here and there that are nice in a vacuum, but like this short is just really dull, really boring, and there's just nothing interesting in it. Like the only real interesting short in the whole thing is the short about Johnny Appleseed, and even that is like maybe a 2 out of 10 short for me. Like it only just beats Fun and Fancy Free because of that one short. But other than that, this movie is basically right on level with Fun and Fancy Free, like I mentioned, with all the package films being literally right stuff here at the bottom. So Melody Time is number 63 on the list. Next up, we have the Three Caballeros, and this is another short that is kind of okay, that has some enjoyable elements. Again, like, for how much I didn't like Mickey and the Beanstalk, I do want to stress I do like the Mickey Mouse characters. So, of course, I do love the Three Caballeros characters, Donald and that. But then they also just go out of their way to kind of make Donald really, really in love with every single live-action woman they could pay to be in this movie, which is questionable, of course. And there's not a lot of great things. There are some good there's some good music in this movie to elevate it at least above the other 2. And there isn't a lot to talk about with this movie. It's fine, it's fun, but to be completely honest, it's like still only a like 1 out of 10 experience for me. Like it's not better, but the music alone is enough to elevate it above Melody Time and Funny Fancy Free, so that's why it makes it above those 2 films. Next up, we've got Saludos Amigos, which is just a shorter and more refined version of Three Caballeros, where it's basically about the 3 Caballeros going to Mexico and kind of learning about the Mexican culture, which is kind of nice to see in an American film set that was made back in the 1940s. But at the same time, like, this movie is so tonally off-putting. Like, they have this whole sequence where, they're doing, crazy slapstick throughout this entire runtime of this movie. And then for some reason, the movie takes a halt to talk about Mary and Joseph and the customs we perform to celebrate them. It's like, why did we stop for a weird, out of place, serious moment in a movie that has been nothing but slapstick for the whole time? Like, it feels so jarring. And this movie's, again, fine. It's got good music because of the Three Caballeros characters, and there's a lot of enjoyable elements that come from this movie, more or less than the previous three package films, but still not enough to elevate it above any other Disney movies, even including the bad ones. So it ends up right here. And then taking the crown for the best of the package films is going to go to Make Mine Music. And funnily enough, Make Mine Music is the only Disney movie out of the whole Disney animated canon that is not on Disney Plus. Well, apart from Zootopia 2, but that just came out, so that doesn't really count. But Make Mine Music is the only one not on there, and I genuinely can't figure out why. The only real theory that I've been able to find anywhere on the internet is that they don't have full rights to the Carpenter and the Wolf segment, so they weren't able to so because of that, they can't put this on Disney Plus. But that's the only reasoning I can find. This is easily my favorite of the package films, but still not very good. I do like they have a lot of creative musical segments in this movie. I do really like the Peter and the Wolf segment, which is fun. And there are definitely a lot of more quality elements in this one, unlike the previous four package films, and which makes it the best of the four package films. But at the same time, I really prefer the Disney movies that are more tightly knit stories that actually have like overarching characters and all stuff like that. So I prefer those to these movies, but it's the best of the package films, but still not good enough to elevate it above my actual least favorite Disney film. So there you have it. All right, we're now officially done with the package films. Now it's time. You guys are probably all asking the question. All right, now we've had our little appetizer with the package films. So now you're probably asking, Caleb, what is your actual least favorite Disney film? Well, let me introduce you to a film that I like maybe only a slight bit better than the package films. My least favorite Disney animated film is gonna go to Dinosaur. Yeah, I know this might be a hot take because I know this movie has its fans, but this movie is just so boring to me. Like, I will admit, because I do like to stay a little positive, and I want to stress this, I love being positive in these videos, and Dinosaur does have quality elements. James Newton Howard did provide a really good score for this movie. Like, the score for Dinosaur is honestly really, really cool, and I do really like some of the photorealism in the movie that looks nice, but on the other hand, this movie is not great. I get that this 3D animation that they have in this movie was state of the art when this movie came out in the early 2000s, but nowadays, it's not aged that great, and as a result, this is one of the probably ugliest looking Disney films. Like, it looks really bad. The characters are really flat. Like, to be honest, I had to Google the names of the characters for this video. The main character's name is Alador, and the main villain name is Kron. And the fact that I had to Google those names probably tells you a lot about how I basically do not connect with these stories. And the story of this movie is literally just the exact same as the Ice Age movies. The characters are walking to a location for the entire runtime of this film. They get to said location, and then movie's over. Like, ugh. Look, and I know this movie has its fans, and I don't want to discredit those fans because I believe that film opinions are subjective and that you can totally love any of the movies you love, even if I end up putting them in the bottom half of this ranking video. And you can even hate some of the movies I put in the top half of this ranking video. Film is subjective, and we all have our own ways of judging films. But Dinosaur, to me, is just a boring film that I've always found boring. Even when I first watched this as a kid, I never really enjoyed this movie, and it just is boring. And it basically means I have to put it I have to put it at the bottom of the list. But at least it has an overarching story, so it at least beats the package films for me, which is why it's my least favorite Disney animated movie. But it's not. It could have been a whole lot worse, to be honest. Alrighty, next up we have Pocahontas, and Pocahontas is so bad. I've never enjoyed this movie. I've never enjoyed it. I've always thought it was bad, and even looking back on it and rewatching it for this video just reminded me how much I hate this movie. Like, oh my. This movie is so hard to talk about because if you didn't know, this movie was designed to be Oscar bait. Yes, you heard me correctly. after Beauty and the Beast got surprisingly nominated for Best Picture, yes, not Best Animated Picture, Best Picture, Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to repeat that success with another Disney movie. So he made Pocahontas, a movie that is so watered down and serious, devoid of everything else that made any other Disney movie special, to make literal Oscar bait. Surprise, surprise, it didn't work. And the funniest thing I've also ever thought about this movie is that the people who messed up on Pocahontas got shipped off to work on Lion King. Yeah, let that sink in, because we're not going to talk about Lion King for a long, long time in this video. Pocahontas is so dull. It's boring. Its romance is dumb. Like, I honestly can't find a single reason why Pocahontas and John Smith get together rather than just being the main characters of a Disney movie. And the animation is such an asterisk in the movie, because there's some moments in this movie that look absolutely breathtaking, like Colors of the Wind. That sequence looks so beautiful, but then every other character in the movie is so stilted, except for like the dog of the main villain for some reason. Radcliffe is also just a bad villain, because funnily enough, he doesn't even meet Pocahontas during the main runtime of this movie, and his whole motivation is just gold. And because he barely has a relationship with our main characters, like, there's no stakes to see him defeated. And yeah, this music is all boring. There's no great songs in this movie except Colors of the Wind. Like, to be honest, if you've never seen Pocahontas before, just go on YouTube and Google Colors of the Wind and watch that sequence and just pretend Disney made it as a short film, because that's literally the only good part of this movie. Yeah, Pocahontas is bad, and it's not good, and it deserves to be near the bottom of this list. But I can at least say Colors of the Wind is better than the entirety of Dinosaur, so that's why it beats Dinosaur. Can't believe I'm judging it on that alone, to be honest. Like, oh man, I gotta find some way to coherently rank these movies, don't I? Ugh. Alrighty, next up we have Chicken Little. And this is a movie that is such a disaster that it honestly surprises me that it even got made. This movie is one of those movies that blends like 3 different genres together, but does it in the worst way possible, because the start of this movie is a classic Disney kid out of his element film, where we have Chicken Little, who's this kid who's bullied by his entire town. He's the screw up. So he wants to play baseball and do good at baseball in order to get popular. And he does that for a little while. And then for some reason, this movie becomes an apocalyptic thriller where Chicken Little believes the sky is falling. And that's the run we go with. And then all of a sudden it turns into aliens. Like, what? Like, this movie's story is all over the place. The characters are also so flat, and they basically just give them traits, and that's the entire premise of their jokes. Like, oh, we have the pig who is fat, so the only joke we're going to do with him is that he's fat. Oh, we have the duckling who is ugly, so the only joke we're going to make is that she's ugly. That joke gets boring really quickly, movie. And when the movie's not using the characters' traits as jokes, it's using pop songs to make jokes like that. To make jokes where they literally have a scene where the pig is freaking out because the aliens are attacking and they're trying to drive away. And then Chicken Little tells the pig that they will survive. And then they start singing I Will Survive. And that's supposed to be funny. No, it's not. And the only things that in this movie that I really found that I laughed at was, of course, I laughed at Porcupine, who is a pretty cool character. And of course, I laughed really hard at the movie when it tried to give an emotional reconciliation to the father character. Like, no, he doesn't deserve it. He didn't earn it. Like, he shouldn't have it. Like, oh my. Chicken Little's a movie that suffered, and it's one of those situations, much like Brave, where it had such a troubled production that kind of resulted in the movie being bad. And I can at least say there's quality elements, so at least it's not last place, but in the same vein, this movie is just bad, and it's low on the list, and I can't really justify putting it any higher. Like, I'm sorry, Chicken Little fans. Alrighty, next up we have The Black Cauldron, and this movie is notorious among Disney fans for being bad. This movie was so bad that it almost tanked the entire studio back when it was first released, to the point where they didn't release it on VHS for like 13 years or something like that. Like, it's crazy that this movie is. Anyway, the movie itself, this movie is kind of like a theatrical version of a Dungeons and Dragons story where it's like a fantasy adventure and the characters fit like the archetypes and all of that stuff. It feels like a D&D adventure at times, but at the same time it's really boring. Like, they kind of don't really do much with the characters. Like, oh, we have the knight character who acts very arrogant for most of the movie and keeps talking about like, oh, I am a great warrior, and then the girl goes like says something like, well, it was really the sword that did everything, and then he was like, well, it takes a great hero to hold the sword, so technically I'm a great hero. And then there's this comic relief like little like chimp thing that is not really funny at all. And then the story's all over the place, where the whole premise of the first half is we have to get this pig who can see the future in order to track down this titular black cauldron. But then the characters get the villain gets the pig 5 minutes in, and then the characters break into his fortress and steal the pig and then use the pig to get to the cauldron, and the villain just follows them, and then the villain ties them up in a room with the black cauldron, and then he leaves the room, and then the characters defeat him so easily because of that, and then he flies into the black cauldron because the main character kicks him towards it when the cauldron's sucking stuff up. Yeah, I don't really like the Horned King in this movie. Like, he's a really cool necromancer villain, like in style and stuff, and his voice looks sick. It sounds cool, but at the same time, it's like, he's so boring. Like, his plan is so like basic villain, and there's nothing really interesting about his character in the whole movie. And the movie also paints him as really incompetent. Like, and I want to stress this, I'm not against incompetent villains because sometimes they can be funny and entertaining, but this movie basically just has the problem of like I mentioned, the villain gets the pig who can see the future 5 minutes in, but then he's the first obstacle the characters have to overcome because they steal the pig by just splashing water in his face and then stealing the pig. And now that you've shown me that the Horn King is completely incompetent, it loses all like sense of credibility for the rest of the runtime. And I want to stress, I'm not against incompetent villains. I am a huge supporter of movies like Spaceballs and Despicable Me, who also have incompetent villains, but at least those villains are entertaining, and at least they don't really like one-up the hero way too often before their final battle, so there at least is still stakes in the story. This movie, the Horned King loses all his sense of stakes in the first 5 minutes, and now I can't be threatened by him for the rest of the movie. Black Cauldron is a movie that has a lot of problems that I can't justify putting it any higher, but it at least, like again, has quality elements, so it's not last. Brother Bear is such a frustrating movie to talk about because the movie has great moments. Like, some moments in this movie are on par with some of the best moments in Disney films. The first like 10 minutes of this movie, where we see the three brothers hanging out and trekking through the wild, is such a great sequence. And then you even have some great emotional heart later in this movie, where you have the main character realizing that he accidentally killed this little cub's mother, and there's this big emotional sequence. The music is really solid in this movie, and even the animation looks gorgeous in some scenes. Like, Brother Bear is great. Unfortunately, this movie kind of takes a huge nosedive after the main character becomes a bear. Because the plot of this movie is that the character gets turned into a bear as sins for killing a bear. And after he gets turned into a bear, the movie just becomes a childish slapstick comedy where after he's turned into a bear, all the animals start talking. And now we're just going to make a bunch of unfunny jokes and a bunch of stuff like that, which feels so tonally different from the first part of the film, like the first 10 minutes of the film. And then also like the later sequences in the film. And then, like I mentioned, the music is good, but then they also have the problem where then they, like the big emotional sequence I just mentioned of the main character realizing he killed this cub's mother is a good sequence, but then it plays a song over the sequence that's just not sad or somber, and it like destroys the entire emotional weight of the movie for me. And it's just like, why is this song here? Brother Bear is a movie that I don't hate, but it definitely is far from great. I want to love this movie so much because it has solid moments in it, but I can't find any reason to put it any higher because the things that are good about this movie take so long to get to the point where it's not even really worth it to sit through this whole movie to get to those moments when I can just watch another Disney movie that's great and also achieves the exact same emotional impact. So, sorry, Brother Bear, you're not going any higher, but I do think that you were at least somewhat solid. All right, next up we have The Aristocats, and this is another movie that I've kind of always been on the fence about whether or not I liked it. Weird, funny Caleb story is that one time when I went to Burger King, which was like an offhanded thing because there was basically nothing else open. I went to a Burger King and I found a discarded DVD in the parking lot of Burger King, and when I looked at it, it was a DVD for The Aristocats. I had never seen the Aristocats before that moment, and that disc inspired me to watch this movie for the first time. And after watching this movie, yeah, I finally understand why this was abandoned in a Burger King parking lot. Man, I would abandon my DVD of this in a Burger King parking lot. All right, all jokes aside, this movie is a fun enough journey. The cats are not the worst characters in the story, but the story is just kind of really bland, where we have this old woman who plans to leave all of her inheritance to her cats when she dies, and then her butler Edgar will get all of the wealth after the cats die, and he doesn't want that to happen, so he decides to he decides to make them fall asleep by putting sleeping powder in their milk and then dumping them on the side of the highway and then just leaving them. And then they make their way back to the house, and then Edgar, still wanting to get rid of them, ships them to Timbuktu, which I don't understand why he didn't do that the first time. Edgar is definitely not an enjoyable villain. He really is not in the movie enough for me to really enjoy him, and the story just is so dumb. Like, I'm all for accepting premises that are kind of funky and weird, but like, an old woman leaving her fortune to cats, like, really? That's what we're going with here? I definitely think this movie needs a lot of improvements because it does have some quality elements, like I mentioned. Like, the characters are not the worst, and I do think there are definitely there's enjoyable music in this movie as well. But overall, this movie's not great. And yeah, honestly, go take your copy of Aristocats and chuck it into a Burger King parking lot. Obviously, I'm joking right now, but I do think that's funny that it was a Burger King parking lot CD that got me to watch the Aristocats for the first time. And now I'm rewatching it again now that Disney Plus exists, and I'm finally discovering that, yeah, maybe I should dump this in a Burger King parking lot as well. Alrighty, next up we've got Oliver and Company, and this is a movie that I think suffers mostly because its source material is weak. This is one of those Disney movies that's based on a pre-existing IP, and this movie is based on the musical Oliver, which is notorious for being one of the worst musicals to ever exist. And I think that suffers on this movie as well because, of course, this movie's following the story of Oliver, which isn't an inherently great story to begin with, so this movie suffers as a result. And this movie also kind of like pushes its story really fast. Like, the pacing is really off in this movie, where they really speed run through character relationships, where we have like the cat basically scratches a dog, so he ends up getting into this dog gang. But then the next day they pull a heist and he gets kidnapped by this girl, and the dogs are like, oh, we got to go save him. He's part of the boys. And then they go save him. But then he's like, I don't want to go back with you guys because I like living with this girl. And they're like, I can't believe you would betray us like this. Like, huh? He knew you guys for like less than 12 hours. What do you mean that you can't believe he betrayed you like this? What? There's some decent music in the movie at least, and I also think that the animation looks pretty, but on the same time, there's some really weird moments. Like, why did they set this movie in New York City? Like, from what I could research about the Oliver musical, it doesn't say where it takes place, and this movie does not take advantage of the New York City, like, presence for me to really think, like, why is that the setting of the movie? Oliver and Company is a fine enough movie, and it does have some decent moments. Like, I do really like Mr. Sykes. He's a pretty good villain for what the movie desires. And like I said, there's some good music and some good animation. But overall, this movie is fine. It's not great, but at the same time, it could have been a whole lot worse. And considering it's adapting Oliver, I would say that a 3 out of 10 is probably the best that this movie was ever going to get. Okay, now we have a movie that I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for having super low, but it's Frozen 2. Yeah, I hate this movie so badly. Then this is a movie that suffered from a very similar problem to Incredibles 2, where Frozen 2 lost an entire year of production, and Disney basically was pushing them to get it out. And even when I first saw this movie for the first time, I knew something felt off about it. And then Disney released the documentary on the making of it onto Disney Plus, and I watched it, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Where basically they got so far into this movie without figuring out anything. Like the voice calling Elsa, that's like the whole catalyst for this movie's story. They didn't figure out who that voice was gonna be until they were like halfway done with the movie. They add a rock ballad into this movie for Kristoff to sing because he didn't sing enough in the first movie, so they had to throw something into this movie, and it's an out-of-nowhere rock ballad that doesn't fit the story at all. And this movie just is so weird. Like, they introduce so many characters that they have no idea what to do with. They've got to speed run plot developments in order to get the characters from point A to point B. So many of the characters are pointless in the story to the point where, honestly, you probably could have left Olaf and Kristoff back at the kingdom with the rest and just had the story on Anna and Elsa, and nothing really changes. Frozen 2 suffers by having so many issues, and it's so apparent that this movie was troubled production. On the other hand, there are quality elements in this movie. There are some good musical songs in this. Although I might have just gave it a lot of crap, I do like Kristoff's rock ballad. I think it's a good enough song outside of the context of the movie. There are some great songs like Show Yourself and even some others here and there that are fun. But overall, this movie is just so dumb, and the story takes so many creative liberties. They have an attempt at an emotional moment in this movie where Elsa finds out that her long dead grandfather is the one who incited the film's conflict by killing a Nathaldra chief, but then Elsa freezes to death. So she sends an ice sculpture message to Anna, which she doesn't know where Anna is, so I don't know how that's possible. And then Anna sees this ice sculpture of her grandfather killing a Nathaldra chief and realizes, oh, we need to destroy the dam that Arendelle built. How did we get to that point? And then they destroy the dam and water's rushing out, and they have another attempt in an emotional moment where if they destroy the dam, Arendelle will get destroyed. But then Elsa miraculously unfreezes and stops the flooding from destroying Arendelle. And then we hear her say oh, me and the other elementals decided that that Arendelle should be spared. There is literally nobody in the kingdom at that point because they all got evacuated at the start of the film. She is just saving buildings. Why couldn't we have a much better ending of Arendelle does get destroyed as a signifier of, oh, we have to destroy the old Arendelle, the one that harmed the Nathaldra people, and then Anna, who becomes queen at the end of the movie, can rebuild a new era of Arendelle. That just seems like a better story than this. And then also, the story is so dumb. So you're telling me that when the elementals started attacking because of Arendelle's king attacking the Nathaldra chief, that Anna and Elsa's mother saved her father, so the elementals decided, oh, we're gonna bless your daughter with these ice powers that she can't control, that leaves her isolated from society, and that's oh yeah, that's such a great gift, spirits, thank you. And then this movie tries to make it up oh, she's the fifth spirit. Let me ask a weird question, because I might just be stupid, but when you already have the other spirits be fire, water, earth, and air, why is the fifth elemental frozen water? Can someone explain that to me? Because I might genuinely just be stupid. Frozen 2 is a movie that I'm so frustrated by because it's a movie that could have been at least mid at best. But at the same time, Disney rushed them and it led to a product that is not good in the slightest. It's got good elements, but it's just a lot of good elements and missed potential that keep me from putting it any higher on the list. I'm sorry, Frozen 2 fans. Hopefully you guys don't get mad where I placed the original Frozen, because oh my, I'm going to get some flame on that segment. I already know that. All right, next up we've got The Sword and the Stone. And this is a very interesting Disney movie to talk about because, I mean, it's got Merlin in it, and Merlin's awesome. And there's some great moments throughout the movie where the whole story is basically Merlin taking the kid who would become King Arthur and turning him into these different animals so that he can like learn life lessons and stuff. And it's basically that's the whole premise for the movie, and I like some of the segments. I mean, there's some good moments, but then there's a lot of rushed plot developments in this movie as well that kind of make me question a lot of things. First off, Madam Mim, one of Disney's staple villains and one that a lot of people that have seen this movie really like. I have a lot of weird questions about Madam Mim because she has a really cool epic wizard duel with Merlin, but in the context of the movie, we meet Madam Mim like 10 minutes before the climactic final battle with her. Like, I feel like she should have been spread across the whole film instead of just limited to this one place. Like, that just feels weird to me. And then the movie realizes in the last 5 minutes, oh, wait, this was supposed to be a King Arthur story. So they rush him pulling out the sword and becoming king into the last 5 minutes. And then he has a whole inner conflict about, like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to be king. And then Merlin shows up and is like, hey, bro, you're going to be a great king. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll be a great king. And that's how the movie ends. It's like, what? Huh? Yeah, this is a movie that I think needed a little more time in the writer's room to get their story kind of knocked down because I don't fully see the point of a lot of things. But again, a movie that has great elements that just don't allow, that also mixes with missed potential to the point where it doesn't really make it any higher on the list. Alrighty, next up we have Ralph Breaks the Internet. And this is a movie that I've always found so frustrating because for the first half of it, I constantly ask myself, like, wait, why does everybody hate this movie so much? And then I get to the back half and I realize, oh, wait, that's why. Because this is a movie that I think is not as bad as everybody says it is for the first half. As the movie tries to tell a fun and interesting story about these retro video game characters that get pulled onto the internet and have to go through this like this new world that they don't really understand and don't really relate to in a lot of senses. But then the back half of this movie destroys everything that was good about the first half by kind of destroying both Ralph and Vanellope's characters because they've now turned Ralph into this unprecedented child, which yes, he does have childish elements in the first film, but not to this level. And then the whole story of this movie is, oh yeah, Vanellope is going to leave the arcade and the race and the Sugar Rush game to live on this much cooler racing game on the internet. Huh. Wait, where have I heard that story before? Oh yeah, right. It's what the villain does in Wreck-It Ralph 1. Yeah, Turbo, the villain in Wreck-It Ralph 1, does that exact same thing. He leaves his game to go to a much cooler one to get attention. Now Vanellope's gonna do it in this sequel without any mention of Turbo. What? And then, oh yeah, we've turned Ralph into this blabbering man-child, so, oh, what's he gonna do to try to convince Vanellope that she shouldn't do what she's gonna do? Is he gonna remind her about Turbo? No, he's just gonna release a virus into the game that captures her glitch on accident and starts destroying the game, which is like, yeah, why did he not expect that? And then the virus scans him because he's insecure and turns the whole internet into a Wreck-It Ralph virus where they have to fight like a 50-foot tall Wreck-It Ralph. And then Ralph gets saved by the Disney princesses. And don't even get me started on the Disney website. Like, I can accept the other, like, product placement references in this movie. Like, I've admitted in the past that I'm not the biggest hater of films like Space Jam 2, the Emoji Movie, and that. But, like, the Disney website's going way too far. Like, oh my, that did not need to be in this movie. Like, what is going on here? Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, is a movie that I wanted to love so badly. And because the movie spends so much time on the internet, it also doesn't have a lot of time for like Felix and Calhoun, which have this really underdeveloped side plot where after the Sugar Rush game gets unplugged, they adopt all the racers. And it seems like when we first see them that Felix is having this whole inner conflict about being a father, and then we don't see Felix again for the rest of the movie, and then when we get to the ending, he's like, oh yeah, we tamed the kids, and it's just a joke about how nobody understands parenting. Like, what? Huh? Like I said, this is a movie that I try to love every time I watch it, because the first half I don't hate. I think the first half is good, and then the second half takes a real bad nosedive into contradicting the first movie's lore, and then failing as a sequel, and even failing as a movie in some places. This is a movie that I want to love so badly, but again, it's got so much missed potential that I can't put it any higher than this slot right here. So, sorry, Wreck-It Ralph 2. Next up, we've got Bolt, and this is another movie that I've constantly tried to love, because I've honestly keep saying this over and over again, and I kind of feel like maybe I'm in a minority here, but why couldn't they have just made a movie about the super dog? Because the first like 5-minute opening sequence of like Bolt being a superhero dog is, in my opinion, the best part of the whole movie. I really like the idea of this super dog that was enhanced in order to kind of protect this girl. It's a really fun little story that I really, really enjoyed. And then the movie takes this left turn into a territory that I'm not a huge fan of, where now we, instead of it being a superhero dog, it's now a TV show where they have the dog be a superhero on the TV show, but they've made the TV show so realistic where the dog thinks it's real, because that'll make the immersion better for the viewers. That is just stupid. Like, I'm sorry, I can only suspend my disbelief so much. And like, who cares about the immersion of the dog? You're telling me in the whole time they've done the Bolt show that they've never had like a CGI element mess up on screen or anything like that? Like, it just feels like such a dumb idea. Like, why do we have to make the realism better for the dog? And then the dog gets lost, and it's like a road trip film about the characters getting back to their owners. Then he teams up with Miley Cyrus, who's this cat who is honestly kind of annoying. And this movie is just one I've always tried so desperately to love, but I feel like if they just made it about a superhero spy dog, it would have been a lot better, because that's the best part of the movie, and everything else is kind of boring after that for me. Like, again, a movie I really try to love, and I'm sorry, Bolt fans, if you love this movie, but I just wish it was about the super dog stuff, because that's the most enjoyable elements of it. And other than that, I don't really care about the rest of this movie, and I kind of can shut it off after the first, like, I feel like I shut this movie off more often after the first 15 minutes, because I'm really not, feel like I'm not missing much after that point. Sorry. Next up, we have Home on the Range, and more than any other film that I've already talked about, this film is kind of the Cars 2 of the Disney animated canon, where yes, this movie's bad, and it probably deserves to be more towards the bottom, but at the same time, I can never bring myself to put it there because of how much I enjoy watching this movie, because of how bad it is. For anyone who doesn't know, this is a story about this group of cows who go on this journey to stop this guy named Amos Slade, who is this yodeler who got kicked off of farms because of his yodeling was too loud. So he has the idea to hypnotize cows with his yodeling so that he can steal them, and then he goes back to the ranches he stole the cows from in a business suit to buy the ranches using the money he got from selling the stolen cows. Yeah, that's just honestly crazy, and I even found out while researching for this video, apparently the original story for this movie was going to be Amos Slade using the hypnotized cows to storm the Capitol and incite himself as president. This dude was going to commit January 6th with a bunch of cows, and honestly, I think that would have been a whole lot more funny than the entirety of this movie. Anyway, this movie's fine for what it is. It's got some interestingly funny jokes. I do really like Amos Slade. He's a fun, kind of goofy villain. And there is definitely quality elements in the movie. But at the same time, there's also a lot of flaws that kind of keep me from putting it any higher on the list. But I do really enjoy this movie more than most. And it really is the Cars 2 of the Disney animated canon. Which, I guess, technically, because Disney owns Pixar, Cars 2 is also the Cars 2 of the Disney animated canon. But hey, we're not talking about that today. Either way, this is a fun movie, and if you've never checked it out, I would totally recommend it because it kind of is one of those dumb, funny movies, but at the same time, I kind of like it. All right, I kind of have to make a little bit of a confession. I kind of lied earlier. A lot of you Disney fanatics in the comments probably wrote a comments after I finished the bottom 5 on this list and said something like, "Wait a second, Caleb, you forgot to talk about a package film. What are you doing? You should talk about it." Well, I kind of lied because there is one more package film I didn't talk about, and the reason being, this one's actually kind of good. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is the only good package film in my opinion, and it's so good that it beats all of the Disney movies that I actually think are terrible, which is basically every Disney movie we've talked about up to this point. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is the one package film I think is really great because both stories are actually surprisingly kind of good. The first story about Mr. Toad is a very interesting kind of little funny short about this courtroom drama thing that is really funny. And then you've got the other story, which is the Headless Horseman short, which is honestly slaps and is one of the best things Disney's ever created because it's so fun. And I really do love these shorts. But at the same time, like I still mentioned before, I do still prefer the Disney movies that are like actually like complete stories and also have like overarching themes and characters and stuff. So this little short can't go any higher, but this should also tell you this is kind of the threshold of going from the movies that I actually dislike from the movies I hate to the movies that I dislike, which I think is a big shift. And I just can't wait to look at this video's comments because I already know a lot of you are going to put something after the first like 5, after I do the first 5 package films, you're going to be like, "Wait, Caleb, you forgot to talk about Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad." And then you guys are going to be seeing this segment right now and you're going to edit those comments to either say something else or being like, "Oh, oops." Yeah, this is a fun movie, but it's not really going any higher because again, I like the movies that are a little bit more complete, we'll say. Alrighty, next up, we've got Moana 2, and this movie suffers a huge problem. As many of you might know, this was supposed to be a TV show. Yeah, for those of you that didn't know, Disney originally developed this Moana story as a mini series for Disney Plus that they were going to split up into multiple episodes, but then Disney realized, "Oh wait, we could make some money on this movie." So they slapped the episodes together hastily and then released it into theaters, and hey, it made them $1 million. So, ugh. But as a result, this movie feels very episodic in its nature because literally when I went into this movie knowing that they had changed it from a Disney Plus show to a movie, I could literally pick out every single moment when an episode would have ended and the next episode would have started. It's that painfully obvious. And there's some interesting moments in this movie where that they also kind of try to have this big epic villain of this like god who like creates this epic storm, but like he doesn't physically appear in the movie at all, and he just shows up in a post-credit scene to tease Moana 3, which is like, why? Like, what was the point of that at all? And then the movie, obviously for this movie, they didn't get Lin-Manuel Miranda back to do the music. So basically this movie's filled with a ton of songs that are trying to emulate Lin's style, but not understanding why Lin's style works. And it kind of is like weird and stuff. And this movie kind of has no emotional stakes at all because like they even have this whole segment at the end where like Moana actually dies and Maui loses his demigod powers, but then like 3 seconds later they both get better and Moana even becomes the demigod herself. And it's like, what was the stakes then? Like, huh? The side characters are honestly boring and not fun. This bat lady should have had a lot more presence in the movie because like, yeah. And yeah, Moana 2 is a movie that suffers because you can tell exactly that this got rushed into a feature film because it originally was going to be a TV show. And I feel like if it was a TV show, it might have been better because they could have stretched out and actually told more stories with these characters. But as it stands, this is kind of a lackluster sequel that kind of doesn't do a lot. And I guess now we have to look forward to Moana 3 because that's all Disney makes anymore, right? Sequels! Yay! Next up, we've got Dumbo, and for anybody who hasn't seen Dumbo before but knows about the story, you guys probably expect that Dumbo's whole plotline of being a flying elephant is probably really crucial to this movie's story. No, he flies only at the exact end. This movie's story is really weird because it's basically Dumbo's life of he gets born and he gets bullied by these literal adults because he has big ears. Then he gets drunk and has this song with these crows. And then he finds out that he can fly because the crows tell him this. And then Dumbo flies, the world loves him, and that's the end of the movie. Like, huh? Yeah, this movie is very short, only sitting at a nice old 64 minutes, but it also suffers from being a movie that not a lot happens in because it's just 64 minutes of Dumbo being born, Dumbo getting drunk, and then finding out he can fly. It's fine. It's a good enough little short film, but at the same time, I kind of wanted more out of it, and it can't really go any higher for those reasons. Sorry. Next up, we've got Cinderella. And of like all the classically adapted fairy tales in like cinema and all that, Cinderella is just one of those stories that I'm kind of getting kind of tired of because there's very few Cinderella adaptations I've seen that try to take creative liberties with the story. And many of you might even realize, also remember, back when I made the Disney live action remake this last summer, I specifically mentioned that the Cinderella live action remake is the only one that I think is better than the original. And that being because I don't really like this original film that much. As a Cinderella adaptation, this film could have been a whole lot better. They shove the entire backstory of Cinderella, how she ends up subservient to her wicked stepmother and her wicked stepsisters, into this like opening 5-minute narration that really feels like it shouldn't be only 5 minutes. And then they don't really make the prince a character in this because the first time Cinderella and the prince have a character, like have a talk to each other, and the first time the prince says anything is when it's midnight and Cinderella has to leave. Like, what? Like, why is there, you have no character? That kind of removes all the stakes that come from their romance. And then it's just so boring. Like, most of the runtime in this movie is given to the mice, which is like, I'm coming to a Cinderella movie wanting to see Cinderella in the prince's character arc, not mice doing slapstick for the entire runtime. Like, what? This is just not a movie I've ever been a huge fan of. And I think that maybe if they made some tweaks to it, like kind of just Control deleting the mice and also maybe diving more into Cinderella's backstory, maybe this movie could have been a little bit higher. But as it stands, this is a fine enough movie, but it's not really doing anything special that really warrants me putting it any higher on the list. So, sorry. Alrighty, I got another hot take. I know a lot of people are going to come at me for this, but I don't really like Bambi that much. This is a movie that has some good elements, like there's really good music, the animation is kind of cute, and I do like some of the sequences in this movie, like the wildfire at the end is pretty cool. But at the same time, this movie kind of doesn't have a lot else going for it. I know a lot of people love this movie because they cry when Bambi's mom dies, but like Bambi's mom is barely a character in the movie before that moment, so her death doesn't really impact me that much. And it's kind of also just like a classic trope in Disney and like just movies to kill off a parent in order to raise stakes. And this isn't the only Disney movie that even does it. And this movie also has some real tonal whiplash because they have the like sequence where Bambi's mom dies, but then we instantly then jump into a cheerful song about how lovely springtime is. Like, what? Yeah, Bambi's a movie that I don't really have a lot of fond memories for. It's got good elements, like I mentioned, but I don't think I can put it any higher because I think the story's a little all over the place because, again, it's a movie kind of less about Bambi grieving his mother and more or less this like cutesy vibe the movie goes for. And then eventually Bambi grows up and he ends up in a relationship with this girl deer, this doe who he met once when he was a child. And it's like, what? Yeah, I'm not a huge Bambi fan, and I know that might be a hot take, but I don't like Bambi that much. And if you do, then more power to you. But I just didn't feel the emotional weight that this movie has on other people on me, so I couldn't really say that I loved it so much. Sorry. Alrighty, next up, I've got Fantasia, and much like how I don't like the package films because they're multiple shorts smashed together into a single story, Fantasia is more or less just a visual concert that gets lumped in with all these other movies because this is a movie where basically it's like the package films having a bunch of little shorts, but they each are around these musical orchestra pieces that are nice to listen to at least. Like the score is obviously pretty nice, and there are some great moments, although sometimes it feels like the celebrities they put in may feel like this is like the Oscars, which is probably not the best. And there are some shorts in this that I think are really good, like some amazing pieces of animation. Like, of course, I love the Chernobog, you guys, and Sorcerer's Apprentice. Like, come on, I'm not totally devoid of heart. Come on. But at the same time, like I mentioned for the package films, I prefer the Disney movies that tell stories and have a lot of stuff going for them. And this movie just unfortunately doesn't. I still think it's really fun, and I do really love the animation, the music, and all that jazz. But at the same time, I can't really justify putting it over movies where I feel like there's better stories than this movie. So sorry about that, guys. For a lot of the same reasons, next up I got Fantasia 2000, and much like how I don't really love the original Fantasia, this one I think is only just slightly better because I think it's a little bit less feels like the Oscars and more or less like a visual concert, which I like. Again, same things I said about the original Fantasia in this movie. This movie's got a great score from some great ancestral musical pieces, some great animation, some great little bits, and there's even some fun moments here and there. But there are also some really weird moments. Like, why is there a sequence in this where it's Donald Duck on Noah's Ark? Like, where did that come from? Yeah, I'm not huge on the Fantasias, if you couldn't tell, but I still think they're good enough to warrant them being over the Disney movies that I think are actually, like, flawed. But at the same time, I can't put them over other Disney movies that I think I just like better. Next up, we've got Strange World, and this is one of Disney's more recent movies, and it's also kind of flat and boring as the movie's trying to capture that whole element of like the whimsical adventure movie that Disney kind of got known for and stuff like that. And there's a lot of quality elements in the opening, but then the second they make it to the Strange World, I kind of lost all interest in the movie as this family is kind of more or less kind of watered down archetypes because like I like the relationship between the son and his dad, and then I like the relationship between the dad and his dad, the grandpa. They're all fun, and I like the interactions, but this movie kind of lacks stakes because this is a Disney movie where they don't have a villain in it, which I feel like a movie like this total that tries to have a whole like nature good metaphor really could have used a villain that kind of wants to exploit the strange world, which is kind of eh. And there's even a sequence in this movie where they're like playing a game and the grandpa walks up and like says a thing to the camera where he's like, "Whoa, you're playing a game without a villain? That's just bad storytelling." Well, gee, Disney, maybe you should take some of that advice. Again, this is a movie I really wanted to love, and this is just as high as I really can warrant putting it because it's kind of a mid movie that has, again, quality elements, but also a lot of missed potential that prevent me from putting it any higher. But still, pretty solid for the most part, I guess. Next up, we've got Raya and the Last Dragon, and this is a movie that comes from the era of Disney films where they didn't really know what they were gonna make. They didn't know what to make as movies and what they didn't know to make as shows because this movie could have been so much better as a TV show because as it stands, the movie tries to have this whole archetype where we are collecting a person from each one of these different areas around the like worlds that then we're going to bring together in the climax as this kind of showcasing of like all of the tribes coming together kind of thing. But because of the nature of the movie's fast pacing, the movie keeps moving from one place to the other where like we get someone and then we zip off to the next location so the plot can keep moving, which kind of feels redundant after a while. And the movie tries to have this message about blind trust that's just not great, and it's done infinitely better in another Disney movie that we're going to talk about later. And Namari is just kind of not a sympathetic villain like the movie wants to portray her as. And there's just so much about this movie that I'm not huge on. Again, this is also a movie where we have Awkwafina playing a main character, and unlike other movies, like I've mentioned, I have found movies where we found ways to put Awkwafina in movies that I like I'll admit, her role in Jumanji and also her role in Marvel's What If and even Shang-Chi for that matter are movies I do like her performance in. This is one of those cases where I don't like Aquafina in something. Sisu is just kind of a really boring character that honestly just feels like the genie, but like minus Robin Williams' entire charm. Raya is a movie that I, again, really tried to love, and it's got good elements, like I said, but man, I wish this was a TV show because I totally feel like they could have spent like an episode or two in each location just to allow us to better understand the side characters and also the world itself instead of trying to cram it all into this short movie that kind of doesn't warrant the exploration that this movie's filmmaking team really tried to accomplish. So, sorry. Wish should really be counting its lucky stars that I'm even giving it this high of a praise because for everything bad about Wish, I will admit I still liked watching the movie. I do think there are some quality elements, like for how much people do crap on the songs. I do actually like a couple songs in this movie. Like I know a lot of people hate them, but I do actually kind of like. I've seen knowing what I know now, and I do kind of like This Is the Thanks I Get. I know that might be a hot take, but I do kind of like them, and I do kind of like Chris Pine as this kind of villain. He's a fun character, but one of the main issues that I've always had with Wish from the first moment I saw it is this movie is meant to be the 100th anniversary movie of Walt Disney Animation Pictures, where there's supposed to be like this movie that's celebrating 100 years of Disney. So a lot of this movie is making references to other Disney movies through like its more generic plot and other characters that we see throughout the movie. Like there's a lot of moments in this movie where they take pauses to reference other Disney movies as kind of a celebration of Disney. But the problem with that is when you take a bunch of stops to tell me those movies exist, it makes me just want to go watch those movies and not stick around to watch this one. Like I mentioned this a little bit during the Raw Breaks the Internet segment, but like all the My Disney website scene does is make me want to watch other Disney movies. And because that movie even went as far as to include The Muppets, Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, it just makes me want to stop watching Raw Breaks the Internet and go watch one of those movies. So, yeah. Wish is a fine enough movie for what it is. I think, again, I don't hate this movie like other people did, and I do think there are some elements in it I like, but it's a movie where, like, if you keep referencing other Disney movies, then I'm just going to go watch those other Disney movies, and I kind of don't want to watch yours. And they even make the villain have some dumb decisions near the end, like, he's going to use his magic. He uses his magic to eat up all the wishes, like, he won. So what's he going to do next? Oh, he's just going to use his magic to chain the citizens to the floor. Like, what was his long-term plan? What was his long-term plan? Like, what? Like, that feels like, what? Huh? Yeah, whatever. Like, Wish is fine, but it's definitely nowhere near great. Like, we can go ahead and move on, I think. Next up, we've got Pinocchio, and like a lot of people think that the whole scene of Dumbo is about Dumbo flying because of how much Disney marketed that as this thing. If you've never seen this movie before, you probably imagine that Pinocchio's nose growing is like a huge plot point or something. Like Pinocchio maybe is like a liar who has to learn like humility and stuff. His nose grows in one scene and then not for the rest of this movie. This movie suffers from a very similar problem to like Raya, where the movie feels very episodic, where we have like very small moments where we have Pinocchio meeting this Italian guy who traps him in a cage where he has the like growing nose bit, and then he escapes him and then he's never seen again. And then Pinocchio goes to this circus island where he finds out that they turn little boys into donkeys and then sell them into enslavement. And then Pinocchio escapes that place and it's never seen again. And then Pinocchio goes home and finds that a note saying his father got eaten by a whale. So he goes into the whale to save his father. Like, what is this movie? It's a movie that's definitely fine, and it's one of the earlier Disney movies, so you kind of gotta cut it a little bit of slack when it comes to its little dated animation. And it's also one of the movies that I did kind of like. Like, Jiminy Cricket's still a fun character. I do still like Pinocchio for the most part. He's kind of this kid. And, of course, I love Geppetto. Like the way that this movie is so much better than the live action remake is astounding, to be honest. It's a movie that I kind of like. Pinocchio is a fun enough movie, but again, the episodic nature of the movie kinda doesn't want me to put it too high, because at the same time, there are other Disney movies that I think have better overarching stories, so this movie can't beat them, unfortunately. Next up, we've got Lady and the Tramp, and this is a movie that kind of dawdles for so long that it kind of backloads all of its like interesting stuff into the last 10 minutes, as this movie just meanders for so long about Lady getting opened up as a Christmas gift and then meeting Tramp, and the two of them fall in love and they have the whole spaghetti scene that everybody knows from this movie. But then the movie kind of dawdles for so long because the movie sets itself up to have a really interesting premise of kind of like a lot of Disney movies, where we have Lady who's grown up in this like lifestyle as a pet, who has like a high royal lifestyle, and then Tramp, who lives on the streets. Like, you would think that they could do something interesting with this premise of two people from different sides of the track. They argue about who has the more fulfilling life and all that. But then the movie doesn't do that and just spent so much time meandering. And then the movie kicks itself into maximum overdrive in the last 10 minutes because a rat breaks into the baby's room and Tramp tries to stop the rat. But then Aunt Sarah takes Tramp to the dog pound because she believes he was attacking the baby. Then Lady reveals it was the rat, so they all go after him. And then they save Tramp, and then we cut to the ending of Lady and Tramp now living together in the house, and then they've had a bunch of kids. Like, huh? Yeah, Lady and the Tramp is just a movie that just dawdles for so long in its entire runtime that it basically front loads everything interesting into the last 10 minutes for some reason. Again, a movie I don't hate. And of course, I love movies sometimes if they take time to dawdle, if it's to introduce characters, but there has to be enough interesting stuff left at the end to keep me hooked on the story. Like, Sinners is not my favorite movie of 2025 just because it dawdles for 40 minutes and then has enough vampire stuff at the ending. It's because it takes a lot of time to establish those characters so you appreciate them more, and that way when we get to the vampire stuff, it actually is good. So, yeah. Lady and the Tramp is a movie I want to love so badly, but at the same time, I can't bring myself to put it any higher than this slot, even though I probably would really love to. Next up, we've got The Rescuers Down Under, and this is a movie that I've kind of always felt very weird about. Like, why did Rescuers get a Disney sequel, but like not anything else? Like, what? This is a fine enough movie, but it kind of is a huge step down from the original, as the mice kind of have no role in the story for the majority of the runtime, and there's this whole overarching plot about the boy mouse trying to propose to the girl mouse, but he keeps failing, and he keeps thinking that she's in love with this other mouse they team up with, but it's a misunderstanding. The boy has a little bit more of a role in the story, but he's also kind of boring. The villain is kind of uninteresting, and it kind of just leads to a movie that's very boring for a majority of its runtime. But again, there are still some good elements. Like, at the end of the movie, once the mice do actually get to have a role in the story, the movie becomes really fun and good. But it just takes so long to get there that I can't really put this movie any higher than where it is right now. But I still think it's solid, and I still think it's a lot of fun. So take that for what it's worth. All right, it's time for hot take time. I already knew this segment was going to happen in this video at some point, but here it goes. I think Frozen is just a mid movie. For everything about Frozen is that Frozen, like I've said with other Disney movies, this movie has enjoyable elements. Let It Go is just that good of a song. Anna is just a good character. Anna and Kristoff's chemistry is a good character. Olaf is a good comic relief. There are good elements in this movie, but it's contrasted by having so many bad elements. Hans really is a terrible villain. Not in the sense of, oh, he's a terrible villain, he's so bad. No, he's a terribly written character who is a bad villain, who is basically just meant to be a slap in the face twist villain for the sake of having a twist villain for no reason at all. There's so many, for every good song in this movie, there's songs like the Rock Troll Ballad and Love is an Open Door and so many other things in this movie. Just, ugh. It's a movie that has some really good elements, and there's some good things in Frozen. I can bring myself to admit that, but it's contrasted by some awful elements that keep it from being anything more than a 6 out of 10 movie. And, ugh. And I'm happy to admit that this movie can be good at some elements, but even then, like, for how much I said, Let It Go might be a good song, but because the song was so overplayed, I can't even really enjoy it anymore because of how overplayed it was. Because for like a solid 3 or 4 years, you could not go to any single place without hearing Let It Go on the mall speakers, on the radio speakers, even teachers playing it in the classrooms, to the point where I can't enjoy it anymore because of how overdone it was. And yeah, I don't want to be one of those Disney adults that hates this movie so much and hates its popularity, but it's a movie that I've never been a fan of. And over time I've finally been able to get over my anger at this movie to finally admit, okay, there is some good elements, and there's a reason why this movie's become $1 billion hit phenomenon for Disney, because everyone latched onto those good elements, but I can't bring myself to put it any higher. I'm sorry, Frozen fandom. Like, this is the best you're getting with Frozen, and to be honest, where it's placed right now should honestly be a treat for you guys, because to be honest, if you had asked me back in like when this movie first released back in like 2013, I probably would have said it's one of my least favorite Disney movies of all time. So you should honestly count yourselves lucky that you're catching me in 2025 instead of in 2013. Next up, we've got The Fox and the Hound, and this movie is one that I've always wanted to love more than I actually did. This is a really heartfelt story about a friendship that gets torn apart by means outside of their control. And it's a movie that is so heartfelt at times, as you really just want to see this friendship get back together. You don't want to see anybody die. And it's a really solid movie, even coming to the point where you even have the villain who even decides to give up at the end. It's one of those kinds of movies, and it's a really fun one. But at the same time, there's some really bad pacing in this movie that, like other Disney movies I mentioned, it takes so long to get to the good elements in Fox and the Hound that it kind of prevents me from putting it any higher, because I don't know if I would want to sit through this movie again just to get to those good elements, which is kind of frustrating because I really want to love this movie. And it's a fine movie for what it is. And like I mentioned, like, this is a fun movie, but I really just kind of wanted more. Like, if they maybe could have cut out a couple of the like really draggy scenes, then this movie could have been a whole lot better for me. But as it stands, this is still a really solid movie. It's got a lot of solid elements, but not enough solid elements to warrant it being any higher than in the middle of our list. Next up, we've got Zootopia, and this is another movie in the same vein as Frozen, where it's a movie that I didn't like initially when it first came out, and over time I've started to open up to this movie, and I've started to see some of the quality elements. The chemistry between Nick and Judy is just so fun. They are such interesting and funny characters, and it's really fun seeing them solve this mystery together. And I do like the other cast of characters we meet throughout the journey. I love Chief Bozo. I love Clawhauser, and even some of the other characters we meet along the way are fun, and this whole mystery is fun to resolve. And this movie is a lot of interesting and fun ideas, but on the unfortunate side is there's also some downsides to this movie. Bellwether is just a villain I've never been intimidated by, as it's one of those cases where it's kind of obvious it's going to end up being her as the villain, because after we get rid of the original mayor and it's revealed it's not actually him that did it, and the stuff still happens, there's not many other characters in the movie that it could be, to the point where even the first time I saw this, I literally sat on my seat, and I think I said, it's either Bellwether or it's the Chief. I literally said that straight up. Like, it's one of them. So, and then when it is revealed as Bellwether, there's like nothing there that intimidates me at all. Like, yes, she's a sheep, but that's supposed to be her facade. She's supposed to look like a meek little sheep, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, and then when the mask comes off, she's supposed to be terrifying, and she's just not for me. And then I also find that this movie kind of keeps spitting in your face what the main message is supposed to be. Like, the movie wants to have this whole message about racism and doing it through animals, through predator and prey, but like the movie keeps spelling that in your face, where it feels like every other conversation every character has is in some way related to what kind of animal species they are. And there's some scenes that are good because they're subtle. That one shot where there's the mother on the train who pulls her daughter closer when a tiger sits down is so good and powerful because it's subtle. But then there's other scenes where characters will somehow come out and spell to you like, oh, no, we gotta go from predator to prey. And it just makes this movie annoying. And I want to also stress that I am also writing and recording this part before I've seen Zootopia 2, so I can't really give my thoughts on how this compares to the first movie right now in this segment, but I'm probably going to talk about it in the Zootopia 2 segment if I haven't already. Again, don't know where it places on the list because I haven't written or recorded that segment yet. But as it stands, I do kind of like the original Zootopia, and it kind of ends up in the middle of the list, as I think it's a very fine Disney movie, but it also has some problems that can't really warrant it going any higher, unfortunately. Next up on the list, we got Big Hero 6, and this is a movie that's very difficult for me to talk about because many of you, if you've watched this channel, know that I'm a huge Marvel fan, and of course Big Hero 6 is another one of those classic Marvel comics, but this movie as a whole has a lot of things that I do really enjoy about it. For one, I think the way this movie tackles grief is a really fun concept about how you get to see how Hero deals with grief, which is really nice to have his support system, and it's really nice. Baymax is a really fun comic relief. I do really like the whole superhero storyline, and the movie gears up to be one of my favorite Disney films of all time, and then Callahan is revealed as the villain, and everything kind of goes downhill after that. Callahan as the villain has always felt so off to me because they have the groundwork in this movie to make Callahan such an interesting villain, as you can have these two sides of the same equation of you have Hero and Callahan dealing with grief, and they both have different ways of channeling it. Hero through his friends, while Callahan doesn't have anybody, so it channels it through revenge. And then they have him say the famous line, which now that was his mistake. Which, you know, kind of destroys the whole character's motivation. He's like, oh, sorry, my protege went back into the fire to get me. He was the stupid one here. That was his fault. It's like, I don't understand why they chose to write Callahan as like the most unrealistic character in the movie, because like they have the groundwork to make him one of the best Disney villains ever. But then they fumble when they make it to the finish line, which is like, great. Other than that, though, I still really enjoy a lot about Big Hero 6. The story may not be the greatest, but I do still like the action, the characters, and for the most part, it's a really fun movie. If only Callahan was a better villain, this movie would have easily shot up near the top of the list, but unfortunately, around the middle of the list is the best that Big Hero 6 can really hope for, unfortunately. Sorry. Next up, we have Treasure Planet, and this is a movie that I've always had conflicting feelings about because I simultaneously feel like it's underrated, but also not that great. It has a lot of elements in it that I think are really slept on when it comes to Disney in general. One thing I really do love is I love the villain in this one. Silver is such an interesting villain in this movie because they really played up a really fun concept with him where they end up revealing him as the villain really early on into the movie, and then you slowly get to see him change over the course of the story when it comes to his relationship with Jim Hawkins, and it comes to a really great climax at the end when he realizes he didn't want the treasure after all this time, which is really good. And I really like that aspect of the film. I love the look of the film. The animation still looks really decent all this time later, and the characters are still great. There are some, of course, that I'm not a huge fan of, but that's not really this movie's true fault. It is mainly just a fact that I'm just not the biggest fan of the Treasure Island book that this is adapting. I mean, I'm not even a huge fan of the Muppets iteration, and I love the Muppets. So anyway, this is a fine movie. It's got a lot of really solid elements like its villain, its characters, its world, and all of that jazz. But unfortunately, the story's not the strongest, but that's also much like Oliver and Company, mainly because this is not adapting the greatest story I've ever had the pleasure of sitting through, which I know is a hot take, but I just not am a huge fan of Treasure Island. So anyway, This is a fun movie, a lot of great things to love about it, which is why it makes around the middle of the list, because I love great things about it, but it also still unfortunately has some glaring weaknesses that keep me from putting it any higher. Next up, we have The Jungle Book, and this is a movie that I always have had a huge soft spot for because, I mean, it's a movie that has some really solid elements. I love the songs, for one thing. Of course, who doesn't love songs like I Want to Be Like You and Bare Necessities? Of course, I love those songs. I love all of the wacky kind of characters we meet throughout the movie. Of course, I love Baloo, Bahira. You get some great characters here like side villains like Ka, who are great, King Louie, obviously, and then you've got Shere Khan, which in hindsight is just basically the Walmart version of Scar. So, I mean, he's fine for what the movie needs, but it's great. And the movie, however, struggles a lot when it comes to its story, as the movie sets up this fun concept of this it sets up this fun story arc where, in order to keep Mowgli safe, he has to leave the jungle and go live in the man village. But he doesn't want to go live in the man village, so he ends up just walking through the jungle and encountering all these kooky side animals that are more or less just. This is definitely one of those movies where it follows the plot of, and then this happens, which does get old over time. And then eventually, the thing that makes this movie so funny is eventually when he does get to the man village, he sees one girl and then he instantly decides to abandon the entire jungle to be with her, which I'm not going to judge a Disney movie that comes from the 1960s for ending with a love interest, but I mean, in a movie like this where there's no mention of any kind of love interest until the last like 10 minutes, like it's just really weird that that's how the movie decides to end it. I'm a huge fan of The Jungle Book, and it definitely has a lot of really solid elements. If only the story was a little stronger, then maybe this could have shot up a couple more slots, but unfortunately, this is the best that I can do for it. Sorry, Jungle Book. I do really want to put you higher. I want to make sure I let that be known. Next up, we have The Rescuers. Better than The Rescuers Down Under by a landslide. I'm a huge fan of The Rescuers. It's one of my favorite Disney films to rewatch, as I do really love the mice characters. I really just love their dynamic with each other, and it's really fun in this movie. I do really love Penny. She's a really cool character, and the child we're obviously trying to save is a lot of fun, and I do get a lot of kick out of the villain. Now, if Jungle Book had the Walmart version of Scar with Shere Khan, then this movie has the Walmart version of Cruella de Vil in the form of Medusa, and she's a really kooky villain who has a lot of really fun elements to say about her. I like her a lot for what it is. This is another movie, though, that I feel like if the story was a little stronger, this easily could have shot up into my top 10, because this is a movie that I always loved for like the first half, where we're learning about this rescue aid society, and we're just setting up this whole fun arc about how this evil woman has captured this little girl in a swamp to force her to get this diamond that she really wants. But then when the mice actually make it to the swamp to save her, the movie kind of slows down a lot and introduces way too many side characters that kind of are for the movie's detriment, and the movie's pacing slows so far down that it kind of lessens the movie's impact when we get to the swamp, which I really wish. I want to put this movie higher again. This is one of those that I wish I could love more, but unfortunately the story kind of drags this movie back, because if the story was stronger, this would be a really top tier Disney movie. But otherwise, it is a really entertaining Disney movie, so the story not being the strongest is not to the movie's so detriment, which is also why it lands roughly near the middle of our list. Next up, we have The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This is a really charming Disney film. I love the 2D animation in this one. It's one of the better looking ones. Of course, you guys might know that I'm a huge fan of Winnie the Pooh, seeing as I thought that Christopher Robin was the best live action remake. And this movie is really fun. This movie, I feel like, is really weird to talk about, because I spent the first part of this video discussing how I hate the package films. But this movie right here is a great example of how I can enjoy a package film, because this movie is less of a story and more or less just a collection of like 5 shorts that they just kind of stitched together involving the Winnie the Pooh characters. But I think that's what sets this apart from those package films, as this film has a central theme, central characters, and it's not just 3 stories that have no business being with each other being slapped together, which I think I enjoy about this movie. And it's the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. How can you not love it? I think the thing that keeps me from putting it any higher, unfortunately, is I think just due to the fact about the number of times I've seen this movie. This movie is one that I've always felt I've seen way more than I probably should have, because like this movie, I watched it a ton as a child, which, you know, you watch a lot of movies when you're a child, so that doesn't equate too much. But like, even in my adult life, like, this is the movie that they based the ride on at Disney. So literally every time you do the ride, you're just watching this movie in just a shortened format, which is kind of makes this movie kind of a little less interesting to watch, especially after you've rode the ride so many times and watched the movie, which is unfortunate. There are some great moments, of course. I do still love Heffalumps and Woozles in this movie. I like a lot about I like Tigger pretty much just in general. There's some great moments that involve Eeyore in this movie. I love Pooh. And of course, I love Christopher Robin for when he's involved in the story. So this is a fun Disney movie, but I just think, unfortunately, due to the fact about the number of times I've seen this movie, I can't justify putting it any higher, because unlike the other movies above it, I don't think I would rewatch this movie as much, even because I've already done that, and there's way more Disney movies I would rather rewatch, unfortunately. So, sorry, Winnie Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Next up, we've got Robin Hood, and this is a Disney movie that I've always had a huge soft spot for because it's just fun. This movie has some great characters, a great story, a lot of really good themes, and there's a lot of really solid elements when it comes to Robin Hood that I can't help but love. One thing that I do have to drag this movie down a little bit on is the recycled animation in this movie is so blatantly obvious, and it kind of hurts the overall style of the film. Like, obviously, they had to do it for budgetary reasons, but like, there's so many sequences of this movie that just feel like they reused animation and didn't really think about it as how obvious it was. Because like, one thing that drags this movie down is like, you have certain things like the voice actor for Honest John is the exact same voice actor as Baloo. So you're already thinking in your mind, hey, we have a bear that sounds exactly like Baloo again. And then we have the scene in the movie where Little John dances, and it's the exact same dance Baloo does during Bare Necessities and I Want to Be Like You. So, yeah, that's kind of blatantly obvious. And then there's also a scene very early on in the movie where the snake apprentice to the Prince John ends up like hypnotizing him with like hypno eyes, which just is such a blatant Jungle Book reuse animation, and it's so obvious. Like, what? Why? So it's just so obvious where they use the reused animation, where unlike other Disney movies where they do actually have a little bit more hidden on where they reused animation. Other than that, though, I do really like Robin Hood for the most part. It's still got a lot of great moments, and I like that this movie is a lot more grounded. Like, when you see a movie like Robin Hood, especially after seeing Robin Hood movies like the ones they make today, they always send Robin Hood on some big epic journey like Monty Python or something. But like, this movie's way more grounded, and it's basically just Honest John. It's just Little John and Robin Hood scamming Prince John, which is just so funny to me, to be honest. And I think that's a way better use of these characters, like in a heist setting, than in some big epic fantasy journey. So I'm a huge fan of Robin Hood. It's a movie that I've always found really charming and likable. It just, unfortunately, that the reused animation does kind of blatantly pull this movie down, because I can't say that it's as solid as the Disney movies that are coming up on this list. Alrighty, we finally made it to it. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first Disney animated movie and the first feature-length animated movie ever created. I knew we would make it to this eventually, and surprisingly, this movie holds up really, really well. For being a 1937 animated movie, being one of the first, it still looks amazing. I love the animation in this movie. The story is obviously a classic, with the evil queen wanting to be the fairest of them all, takes a poison apple to Snow White and causes her to basically die, which is just classic. I love the dwarfs. They're obviously staple of Disney and just meme culture in general, and I love the dwarfs as characters, and there's a lot I really love about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Unfortunately, I do still have some negatives with it that can't put it any higher. Something I don't really like about this movie is that the prince is kind of not a character in this, as he shows up once in like early in the film to establish he exists, and get him to kind of meet Snow White in some case. And then he just disappears from the movie entirely until the very end, where he kisses Snow White and they live happily ever after. And I also just think the pacing kind of struggles a little bit when we do make it to the dwarf's house, as Snow White kind of spends a long time cleaning it when we kind of spend way too long away from the evil queen plot line. And it's just unfortunate. Like, this movie feels like its runtime should fit the movie perfectly based on the story, but like, something I didn't even realize until I rewatched the movie for this video is that the entire story we all know about Snow White, where the evil queen turns herself into the old hag and gives her the poison apple, and then gets a boulder dropped on her, and then Snow White has her kiss with the prince. That all happens in the last 10 minutes of the movie. So, like, the movie drags for a very long time, unfortunately. Other than that, though, Snow White's still still a great Disney movie all these years later, and easily still somehow 20 times better than the live action remake. And I just can't believe that still is just still something that happened. Like, oh man, it's just so fun. I love Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's a really good movie, but unfortunately, the negatives of it do keep me from putting it any higher than where it is right now. So, yeah. So, funny story, I'm actually writing and recording this segment right after I finish making my Zootopia 2 review. So I want to try to keep this segment a little bit brief because I already made a full other video on this movie, and I don't really have much more to say about it that I didn't already say in that full dedicated video. So if you want to know my full thoughts on Zootopia 2, go see it on my channel. I released it about a week or two ago from when this video will be coming out. I to put it lightly, in case you haven't seen that video, I like Zootopia 2. It's a really fun movie that actually does what you want out of a sequel, expands the lore and the universe in a really believable way. The characters still feel consistent. I like a lot about it. Unfortunately, the mystery is just a little bit obvious in this movie, and the twist villain just doesn't really hit the way the movie wants it to. I like Zootopia 2. I do think it's an improvement over the original, and it's a really fun film. If you want to know my extended thoughts, go watch my other video, but we still got a lot of Disney movies to get to, so here's Zootopia 2's placement on this list, and if you want to know my full thoughts on it, go check out that other video. Next up, we've got Peter Pan, and this is one of those more chill vibes kind of Disney movie where there's not a lot going on in terms of the story in that. It's more or less Peter Pan abducts the Darling children, takes them to Neverland, and they kind of just hang out and do random stuff with the Lost Boys for most of the movie, while Captain Hook tries to capture Peter Pan, and that's more or less the plot. There's not a lot happening in this movie. I do like a lot of the things about this. Of course, I do love Peter Pan. He's just a really fun character, and I love the Darling children as well in this movie. The Lost Boys can get a lot of fun. I also love Captain Hook. He is such a scene stealer. Every time he appears on screen, he instantly steals the scene. Him and Shmi are some of the best villain duos in the entirety of the Disney canon, and there's a lot of fun that happens with Captain Hook. He's a really well-voiced character, and it doesn't surprise me that Disney basically took him and made him the entire main villain of multiple Peter Pan spin-off media. Peter Pan's a fine movie, but there's also a lot of things that hold it down. Mainly, you've got the unfortunate representation of the Indians in this movie, which is not the greatest. And I also think that the movie does kind of dawdle way too long on random misadventures to kind of force it from being any higher than this. I like Peter Pan. There's a lot of great elements. But unfortunately, the story and the unfortunate representation in this movie does kind of drag this one from being any higher. So, sorry, Peter Pan. Alright, I know this one's also going to get me in a little bit of trouble. Next up, we've got Hercules. And I'm sorry, Hercules fans. I am not the biggest fan of this movie. I do think, again, there are really quality elements in Hercules. I want to stress that enough. I do really like the characters in it. Hercules is just a really fun main character. I like his arc. Of course, I love Meg as the love interest. You got Phil in there, who's a great comic relief. Hades is an amazing villain, and I do really like the story of Hercules as well. Unfortunately, Hercules is just not one of my more watched Disney movies, as I do think the lack of songs does kind of hurt this movie because they would fit the tone of this thing perfectly. And there's a lot of moments in this movie that I think are intentionally trying to be funny, and the movie more comes off as annoying rather than funny, which is unfortunate. I think Hercules has a lot of quality elements. There's definitely a lot of things I like about Hercules, which is why it's not lower, but unfortunately, it's not one of my more watched Disney movies, so I can't justify putting it any higher. But I do still think it's a fun Disney movie, and it definitely is not as good as the rest of the Renaissance, but I do still think it is better than most of the Disney movies that came before it. So, you know what? I'll take what I can get. Oh, yeah, now we've got a Disney movie that I've constantly said is underrated. Next up, we've got Atlantis the Lost Empire. This is a Disney movie that I've always loved, and it's one that I don't see a lot of people talking about, surprisingly. This is a movie that I have a lot of pent up nostalgia for, and a lot of elements in this I really do love. First off, I gotta let it out right away. The main character in this, Milo, is played by Michael J. Fox, which of course, you know, I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, so of course I love Michael J. Fox in this movie. I do love Rourke in this movie. He's a really good villain. I love the journey in this movie. The side characters are all very nice and likable, having some really good comic relief moments, while also being very different from one another, which I do really like in the movie. I love the mystery. I love the adventure, the action. This is a Disney movie that I've constantly said is underrated because it's just so good. Unfortunately, when we reach this point in the list, we're starting to get to those Disney movies that are nigh near perfect, and it's more or less just becoming a method of personal preference at this point. And unfortunately, for how much I said I love Atlantis, I do still think there's there's at least 20 more Disney movies that are better than it. So I can't unfortunately put it into the top 20 as much as I really badly want to, because it does unfortunately have some pacing issues near the second act. But other than that, I love Atlantis, The Lost Empire. It's a great movie, and I just can't help but love it every time it comes on. And honestly, I think more people should rewatch this and talk about this movie because it is leagues and bounds better than lots of the Disney canon, which a lot of people don't seem to realize. I love Atlantis. It's a fun movie. Unfortunately, if the pacing in the second act wasn't as egregious as it was, this movie would instantly shoot up a little bit higher into the top 20, maybe even the top 10. I love this movie. I can bring myself to admit that. Finally bringing us into the top 20 is gonna be Tarzan. And this is a Disney movie that I have interesting feelings on. There's a lot of elements in this that I really do enjoy. I just love Tarzan and Jane. They're a really good romantic pairing, and there's a lot of great elements with their romance in this movie because it borders on the line of being fun and subtle, while at the same time being enough in depth to where you feel their romance, especially with the father of Jane, who isn't in this movie a ton. I do really love Clayton as the villain, although he is a little bit more of a beta Gaston. Wow, we're getting a lot of beta villains in this video, but I like him, and honestly, his death scene is so shocking. Like, I can't believe Disney decided to go for that and get away with it. Like, that's honestly shocking for me. The problems I have with Tarzan kind of borders down to a couple main issues. I just don't like the father character to Tarzan, the gorilla, as they spend this whole movie doing like oh, he hates him and all that, and then just to have him at the end be like, you were my son all along, which is like, no, he wasn't. Like, I don't know why you're pulling that out of nowhere. And I mean, I think it would honestly be better if it was he died, but Tarzan realized he didn't need Kerchak's love and opinion, and he just decides to be his own man. I think that would be a way better arc. And I personally don't really like that every song in this movie is a background song. I think, like, I don't want to get around that. I don't hate the background songs in Disney movies. There are some great instances of it. But I think it works in those movies because either A, it's once or twice in the movie, and B, it's put alongside songs that are sung by the actual characters. In Tarzan, every song in this movie is played in the background, and it just made it feel so jarring where it feels like, why couldn't we have some of the characters sing these songs? Which I feel like would be a lot more impactful to these movies. In fact, if you wanted to have Phil Collins voice all the songs, then just go ahead and just make it seem like the characters are singing them. Like, they've done that before where the singing voice is different from the acting voice, but whatever. Also, I will say Tarzan has some great animation as well. I forgot to mention that. Tarzan is a really fun movie that has a lot of enjoyable elements. If only the songs were sung by the actual characters and they handled Kerchak a little better, this might have shot up a little bit higher. But as it stands, I think bringing us into the top 20 is not a bad look for Tarzan of all things. Next up, I have Alice in Wonderland. And this is a really funky kind of movie because it is very integral to the actual book. I've mentioned before that I'm not a huge fan of movies that have the plot of, and then this happens, but this movie works in the sense that that's kind of how the Alice in Wonderland book functions, where it's a lot of we're dealing with one set of characters, then all of a sudden we're shooting off to a whole new set. And there are a lot of enjoyment to come from many of the characters. Of course, you got the Dodo in there, the Mad Hatter, and the March Hare. Of course, you have the Queen of Hearts, the Cheshire Cat, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And there's a lot of great moments. And it all works in a sense because this movie's all connected with a really fun premise of it feels like a dream. And that's kind of where the fun comes of it. This is one of the few times in a film where when it ends with it was all a dream actually works, which is nice. And I also read this book when I was a kid. So, of course, I do have a lot of nostalgia for that part specifically. I just love a lot about Alice in Wonderland. It's one of those great Disney movies. But again, much like some of the other Disney movies, the pacing of this movie can be a little choppy at times, especially with the and then this happens sort of nature. So I can't put this movie any higher, but I do still love Alice in Wonderland. It's one of the more charming Disney movies, and I just think it's a really decent one, and maybe you should go watch it because it does actually hold up surprisingly well for how old it is. Next up, we have Encanto. Encanto is a very difficult movie to talk about because there's a lot of really solid elements. Like, of course, the music in this movie. I do really love pretty much every song in this movie. There's a couple parts of a certain individual songs I'm not huge on, but at the same time, all of the songs work really well in the context of the story, while at the same time being bangers to listen to on my own volition. So I do really like that. The characters in this movie are all great. I do really love that there's a lot of really notable characters in Encanto, not only in the main Madrigal family, but also just the side characters as well. There's so many recognizable characters in this movie. I love the whole story of this movie as it's more of a mystery kind of tale about Mirabelle uncovering the cracks in her family instead of making her go on some big epic quest or something to like earn a gift or something. I think that would be a really fun idea. And I do really like the message they go for in this movie, how you have Alma, who is not inherently a bad person, but is actually detrimental to her family, which I do think is a really smart way to do it. The movie handles that theme really, really well, and I just love the world and the characters in this movie. Encanto's got a lot of great things about it. I just don't think it's the peakest of the peak like everybody claims it is. I still think it's a really solid Disney movie, of course, because of course we're this far into the video, but I like Encanto. It just, unfortunately, like I said, we're getting to the point where most of these Disney movies are 9-year perfect, and it's more or less just becoming a method of personal preference. And of all the Disney movies we still have yet to cover, Encanto is just one of the ones that I don't really find myself rewatching all too often. So, yeah, sorry. Alrighty, now we have Mulan, and I love this movie, to be frank. It's such a fun story about a female young girl who enlists in the army to go in place of her father to protect him, and we get to see a great story about her where she struggles and she eventually grows into this amazing hero that saves all of China. And it's such a great story. I wonder how the Disney live action remake turned out. Oh yeah, it's the worst one. I almost forgot. Sorry, I kind of had to squeeze that in there. Borderline is Mulan is just a great movie. It's got amazing songs, a great character arc for our main character, great side characters. Of course, I love Mushu in this movie. You've got a lot of great characters. And honestly, the thing in this movie is I love the emotion of Mulan, struggling, her going off to war for her father. And in the end, when she comes back, her father saying that she was the greatest gift of all. Oh man, that line gets me every single time. I just love Mulan for so many different reasons. And I even mentioned back when I did the live action remake ranking that the live action Mulan is so bad it genuinely makes you question if you like the original. So if you don't think you like Mulan, watch this one. And if you still don't like it, then okay, you can dislike Mulan at this point. Because, I mean, the live action remake's not going to win you over in any cases. I love Mulan. It's a fun movie. I have a lot of enjoyment for it. Unfortunately, I do think the movie does have some issues where it kind of drops off song quality near the end. I know that's kind of a weird nitpick because the movie wants to have a darker tone after the village burns down, but like it's not like they maintain that serious tone with like because they still have the comic relief characters, so they could have had at least one or two more songs and or at least one near the end when like they actually save all of China. Like this movie needs at least one or two more songs in the back half because it kind of drops off for some reason after a while. So other than that, though, Mulan's pretty much perfect across the board, and it's not a 9-year perfect Disney film that's why it's made it so far on the list because it's just that good. Unfortunately, due to that darker tone that it takes in the end and the lack of songs, it does kind of prevent me from putting it any higher. But borderline is Mulan is amazing and is worthy of being one of the best Disney films ever created because it just is such a powerful one. Now we have Sleeping Beauty, the best of Disney's three classic Christmas movies. This movie, I think I've always loved more than Snow White and Cinderella, as this movie feels like it took the criticisms of those movies and pretty much just ixnayed them like out of existence pretty much because they eliminated my problem with Snow White and Cinderella not having relationships with their princes because this one we actually spend a decent amount of time with our prince and getting a chance to know him, getting a chance for him and Cinderella to meet and get some to know each other before we end up getting the final connection with them at the end where the prince kisses the princess. This movie also I feel like has a great story, as you would think going into this movie that the idea of Cinderella pricking her finger on a spinning wheel is going to be really dumb, but the movie takes itself very seriously. The king and queen burn all the spinning wheels in the kingdom. They hide Aurora in the forest with the three fairy godmothers so that Maleficent can't find her. And yeah, I was kind of seeing how long I could go in this segment without talking about Maleficent because, of course, I had to talk about Maleficent. She's one of the most popular Disney villains, and she still is a really good one in this movie. Her motivations maybe are a little slim, and I wish she was a little more present through the second act of this movie. But other than that, she's still an awesome villain. And of course, that final battle where she turns into a dragon to fight the prince. Ooh, it's one of my favorite Disney final battles. It's so, so good. I love that sequence. This is just a really charming Disney movie that has a lot of great elements. I just don't find myself going back to rewatch this one as much as I do like the Renaissance musicals and some of the 2000s movies that I just love more. But I think Sleeping Beauty again is a 9-year perfect Disney film. And at this point, we're just getting into personal preference. So I can't put this one any higher like I certainly want to, but I love Sleeping Beauty. It's far better than the previous two Disney princess movies. And it still is one of Disney's best, surprisingly. Okay, guys, I have kind of a little bit of a confession. When I wrote, recorded, edited the Zootopia 2 review, I made this whole point that Zootopia 2 is the best theatrical sequel that Disney has ever made. And I mainly used my citing sources as like Moana 2, Rob Breaks the Internet, and Rescuers Down Under as my basis. And I completely forgot that this movie existed because as you can probably tell by the ranking, I do actually like this movie more than Zootopia 2. Let it be seen, Winnie the Pooh. Not to be confused with the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh that we've already talked about, but Winnie the Pooh 2010. 2011, I think, is when this movie came out. Yeah, 2011. So this movie, I really enjoy more than the original Winnie the Pooh because this movie actually feels like a complete story and not like a collection of shorts that got slapped together, as this movie still feels like a collection of Winnie the Pooh shorts, but they all kind of lead into each other, as we have starting out with Pooh wanting to find some honey, then we go into the backs and stuff, and then we eventually loop back around to finding Eeyore's tail, and then we end up coming back to Pooh winning the honey pot. So it's a movie that feels very connected. I do like still the vibes of this movie. I'm really impressed with Disney for not trying to modernize Winnie the Pooh like other studios did when they tried to modernize the Smurfs and Alvin and the Chipmunks when they revived them in this time period. They kept Winnie the Pooh the exact same with the same voice actors and that. I'm starting to wonder if there's some kind of Disney contract that keeps them from changing it because they also did the same thing with Christopher Robin. So I'm starting to wonder if there's some conspiracy going on or Disney just has great Winnie the Pooh ideas. I still can't figure that out. Anyway, this is a fun movie that I do actually like more than Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh for a couple reasons I've stated. I like this movie, it's fun, but I do still think it does have a little bit of that energy of, and then this happens, so I can't really justify putting it any higher than this right now, but, yeah, This now takes the title of the best Disney theatrical sequel because I completely forgot this movie existed when I made my Zootopia 2 review. So, sorry, I'm going to amend that point right now. But I love Winnie the Pooh 2. I love Winnie the Pooh. It's a great movie, and it is taking this spot on the list. Next up, we have Princess and the Frog. And this movie has a lot of really solid positives. Of course, you got Dr. Facilier, who's one of my personal favorite Disney villains. Of course, he's got a great villain song, Friends on the Other Side, which is a bop that I constantly listen to on repeat. And he's just such a fun villain. I love Tiana as a protagonist. She's a really fun character to follow. Naveen can be a little annoying at times, but he does eventually grow out of that about halfway through the movie, which I love. Of course, I love Jim Cummings, so of course I love Ray. The crocodile is a little bit interesting. I wish they had some interesting moments here and there that I do enjoy or don't enjoy, so it kind of varies on from moment to moment. And there's other characters in this that I don't really like. I do like and don't like, so there's really good balance with the characters. My main issue with Princess and the Frog kind of comes in the story department because I do love huge portions of this movie. The entire opening segment of this movie is a great way to introduce us to this world, the concept of turning people into frogs, and this whole kind of fun arc about how Tiana believes in working for your dreams instead of wishing for them, which is a really good arc. And of course, then you have the entire finale with the Mardi Gras party. And of course, I do love the time we spend with Mama Odie, the riverboat sequence, and a lot of that moments, especially with Dr. Facilier summoning all his friends on the other side in the forms of these shadows to attack the heroes is a lot of fun. I just think the first part of the movie that we spend in the bayou does get a little boring as it's kind of the frogs have just recently turned, so they got to try to figure everything out, and Lewis is still kind of annoying at this point, so it's a little for me, but thankfully it gets better, and at the same time, while that's all happening, they just have Lawrence and Dr. Facilier having weird discussions about, oh, we need Naveen's blood, and all that. I think that if the movie's second act was a little bit shorter and maybe turned to some of the boring animals trying to figure out how to live as animals things out, then this movie could have easily shot up a little bit higher, but I love Princess and the Frog for what it is. It's a great, fun Disney movie, and as Disney's last 2D animated film, it's a really great way for that style to go out, as this was a really good one to end that style on. But due to the problems, it can't go any higher, which is a shame because I do want to put this movie higher because I just love Princess and the Frog, man. And now we come to the Disney movie that I think is the most underrated, The Emperor's New Groove. I love this movie. It has so many high elements that I just love about this movie. Of course, you have Kuzco, our main protagonist, who has one of the best arcs in the entire Disney canon. As he kind of has the classic archetype where he's basically this unlikable jerk for the first part of the movie, and then he eventually grows over the course of the story to becoming one of the most profound characters at the end. It's such a well-handled arc in this movie, and I just love it to death. Of course, you've got Yzma and Kronk, who are one of the best villain duos in the entire Disney pantheon. Yes, that includes other studios like Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars. I just love Yzma and Kronk, and of course, Patrick Warburton is my man, so of course I love that one. And you've got some great moments throughout the movie, and of course the animation's gorgeous. But there are still, unfortunately, some problems. Like this, well, I guess this is less of a problem, more of a nitpick. I wish that there were songs in this movie because they would fit the tone perfectly, much like Hercules, where, of course, if you've never heard, they do have a villain song for Yzma called Snuff Out the Light, which is a really big bop that I constantly find myself listening to, and I wish that this movie had songs like that because they would fit the tone of Emperor's New Groove perfectly, but that's more of a nitpick than a negative. But other than that, I love Emperor's New Groove. It's, in my opinion, one of the most underrated Disney movies of all time, and it definitely deserves to be rewatched because it just is that good. I love Emperor's New Groove, and it definitely deserves to end up this high on the list, but unfortunately, I like 12 Disney movies better than it, so it can't unfortunately make it any higher. Let's be honest with ourselves, you knew after you clicked on this video that most of the Disney Renaissance was going to make it up here near the top 10 because, I mean, it's the Disney Renaissance, it's the peak of the Disney company, so of course most of those movies were going to end up here, and we're starting that list off with Aladdin. I've always loved the Aladdin story. It's such a fun little story. Of course, it's a very classic one. Poor boy gets 3 wishes from a magic genie, and it's a great story. And you gotta love Jasmine and Aladdin have such great chemistry on the screen. Of course, I love Robin Williams as the genie. Who doesn't? And you got a great villain in the form of Jafar, who kind of is a baffling buffoon for the first half of the movie, but the second he gets that genie's lamp and turns into the most powerful sorcerer on Earth, he's 9-year unstoppable, and he's such a good villain. I love the Sultan. He's a kooky character. Of course, I love many characters in this movie, like Abu, and you've got the bird. I'm forgetting the bird's name right now for some reason. Iago, thank you, brain. I love this movie to death. I love Aladdin. It's got great songs in it too. Of course, I constantly find myself singing Friend Like Me, Prince Ali, and even One Jump Ahead. There's so many great songs in this Aladdin movie, and it's so great. Unfortunately, I do still think that there are other Disney movies that are paced better and have a little bit more songs, because I do think there's some songs in this that are a little bit of stinkers. But on that, Aladdin is a really solid movie, and if this is like the bottom of the prime Disney Renaissance, because I kind of let Pocahontas and Hercules slip back a little bit, then Aladdin is, if this is the bottom we're shooting for, then we obviously have great things to say about the other movies in the Disney Renaissance that are going to be coming up 9 years shortly. Alrighty, next up we have Tangled. And I always get mad at the fact that I see Frozen taking off so far as much as it has, because Tangled is better in every single way than Frozen, and I wish that more people would have latched onto this one as they did, because this movie's great. Of course, you have great chemistry between Flynn Rider and Rapunzel that carries this movie on its back. I love the whole kind of rivalry that Flynn has with the horse Maximus, who is a great character. Mother Gothel maybe is not the greatest Disney villain, but she does work for what the story needs. When the movie does have songs, they're some of the greatest moments in the movie. Like that scene of I See the Light with all the lanterns. My, that's one of my favorite scenes in any Disney movie ever, because it's just that powerful. This movie is peak Disney, and I wish that more people latched onto this movie than Frozen, because this movie deserves to be near the top 10 Disney films of all time, because it just is that good. And for being a 2010s Disney movie, this feels like a shot to the past of the Disney Renaissance films. But I do still think 10 Disney movies are better than this one, so unfortunately Tangled can't go any higher. But man, I love Tangled so much, and more people should rewatch this one, because I genuinely believe it's better than Frozen in any way, and I wish that this movie was the one Disney was making sequels of instead of Frozen. Yeah, I know that's a hot take. Come after me if you want. Bringing us into the top 10, we have Moana. And yeah, I still love Moana all these years later. I was not the hugest lover of this film when I first saw it, but over time, it's just grown on me more and more. Of course, the songs in this movie are still great. You got a lot of great songs in this movie for what it is. I've mentioned in the past in this channel that I'm not the hugest fan of The Rock, but of course I do love Maui in this movie. Moana's a great Disney protagonist. You've got a great journey across the sea, and it's just such a powerful Disney movie that has so many great elements to it. But like I mentioned, I'm not the biggest Moana fan, so I can't put it any higher than number 10. It's still one of Disney's best in my opinion, but I do still think there's 9 Disney movies that I think I like better than it. So I can't put Moana any higher than this, but I will say that this is a really high spot for Moana, and it should be taken as a huge profit to this movie that I do really, really enjoy Moana. So yeah, Moana's great. I just think 9 Disney movies are better than it, so I can't put it any higher. Sorry. Surprisingly, I have at number 9 Lilo and Stitch. Now, this is a Disney movie that if you look at the poster or the trailers, it kind of showcases a weird marketing tool for this movie that almost makes it look like not that great, because it's Stitch crashing other Disney movies, which doesn't really feel like a great way to market a movie, because it kind of just sends the message of, oh, this is not going to be like the Disney movies of old. This is a new Disney movie. But then you watch the movie, and it's one of the best tales that Disney has ever crafted, about this great story about love and loss, where you have Lilo and Nani, who lost their parents and are just trying to get along with each other. And then they pick up Stitch, who Lilo and Stitch are pretty much the exact same character, and they understand each other, which is so profound. And then you've got the alien stuff in this movie, which is so great. Of course, Captain Gantu, my lord and savior. I hate that they cut this man out of the live-action remake, because he is one of my favorite parts of the Lilo and Stitch franchise. Of course, I love Jumba and Pleakley. They're great comic relief side characters. And there's so many great moments in Lilo and Stitch. There's so many tributes to Hawaiian culture in this movie that I love. I just have always found Lilo and Stitch one of modern Disney's greatest achievements, and it's still this good this many years later. I love Lilo and Stitch. It's still one of my favorite Disney movies, and I definitely think it's worthy of being this high on the list. Unfortunately, there's still 8 movies in this list that I like better. Remember, I've said this. At this point, we're reaching the point where the Disney movies are 9-year perfect, and it's just becoming a method of personal preference. And I do, unfortunately, like 8 Disney movies better than Lilo and Stitch. But Lilo and Stitch, still a top tier Disney movie, and it's still great. Love it. I'm actually shocked to tell you all that at number 8, I have The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This movie feels so different to every other Disney movie in the entire Disney company, because lots of the Disney movies are marketed with this sense of they are geared and marketed towards kids, but realistically anybody can walk into a Disney movie and they'll probably enjoy it, or at least they'll be able to understand it. This movie is the opposite. It's pandering to the adult audience while basically leaving the kids behind entirely. I did not like this movie at all when I was a kid, but now rewatching as an adult, oh my, it's now one of my favorite Disney movies. I think some of the reasons I love this is this movie feels way too realistic in senses. Frollo is by far the best villain Disney ever created because he genuinely feels like a villain that could be existing in the real world. And his villain song, Hellfire, whoo, it's one of my favorite Disney villain songs. And then you've got great side characters. Of course, I love Quasimodo and Esmeralda. There's great songs throughout the movie, some great animation, lots of profound adult themes, and man, I love this movie to death. Unfortunately, if I did have to have any negatives with it to justify putting it at number 8 is I think that the movie, someone in the Disney company watched this movie, realized how adult they were making the story, and tried to find some way to make it marketable to kids by inserting these gargoyles into the movie. And I swear every single one of them is the most annoying character I've ever met in my entire life. And their song that they sing is so bad that it kind of dragged the whole movie down from where it probably should be, which is like number 3 or number 2. So eliminate the gargoyles from this movie and it instantly shoots up to second place pretty much because I just love this movie that much. So unfortunately, had to put this movie at number 8, but I still think that's a really solid thing. I love this movie and it's still just that great. At number 7, we have The Little Mermaid. And yeah, of course this movie had to rank high. This was Disney's first attempt at making what is essentially an animated Broadway musical, and they knocked it out of the park instantly, to the point where this is now the kind of movie that everybody associates the name Disney with, because it's so great. The Little Mermaid follows such a great formula of mixing music with voice acting to create a story that is so profound and great. Ursula, still a top tier Disney villain, and her villain song, of course, Poor Unfortunate Souls, is such a bop that it's been remixed so many times across the Disney canon that I can't help but love it. Of course, you love so many other songs. Under the Sea is such a bop that did not need to go as hard as it did, considering how little it affects the story. Of course, you have Part of Your World, Kiss the Girl, that are all amazing musical numbers. Of course, I love The Little Mermaid. It's more than worthy of being near the top of the Disney list. But like I said, we're reaching the point in the list where it's just a method of personal preference, and unfortunately there's 6 Disney movies I like better than The Little Mermaid, so I can't put it any higher, but just let it be known that this is one of Disney's greatest achievements, and if we didn't, I respect Little Mermaid more than I did now, because technically, if we didn't get The Little Mermaid, there are 2 Disney movies I have ranked above it that we probably never would have gotten, so thank you to The Little Mermaid for that reason. So yeah, great movie, great in everything. I can't help but love Little Mermaid. I just think that there are 6 Disney films that are better than it, so I can't unfortunately put it any higher. I mean, what do you want me to say? There's literally nothing I think that I can add to the conversation that hasn't already been said already by hundreds of other creators on the internet. I mean, you knew when you clicked on this video that Lion King was going to be near the top. Like, let's be honest here. You knew this was going to be here. like Lion King is one of Disney's greatest achievements, having so many emotional great things. Not a single bad song in its entire soundtrack. Even the opening of this movie is one of the greatest Disney ever created, with that sunrise to the great soundtrack to the dramatic thud of that title card. It's one of the greatest, not only openings of any Disney movie ever, but maybe in all of animation. It's so good. Pair that with some amazing comic relief characters in the form of Timon and Pumbaa, a great arc for Simba. Scar is still one of the best Disney villains because he actually completes his villain plan, and actually you get to have a lot of great moments in this movie. In fact, Lion King is such a great movie that if any random person came up to me on the street, kid or not, and asked, I want to get into Disney movies, which one should I start with? I honestly would say not The Lion King, because I feel like if you tell a kid, hey, start with The Lion King, you're setting them up for failure, because they're just going to think every other Disney movie in comparison is a downgrade compared to this. And we're kind of once again doing that thing I did with the DreamWorks video, where if you remember, I said in the DreamWorks video that Prince of Egypt is probably the best DreamWorks movie, but I couldn't put it at number one because I like other movies better. We're kind of entering the same territory here. Lion King is probably the best Disney movie critically, but I like 5 other Disney movies better, so I can't put it any higher. But that's just a testament to how much I like those movies, because Lion King is a 9-year perfect film that does so many things right, to the point where, yeah, of course it's going to be in the top of this list. Like, if I had it any lower than probably number 20, I was going to get hundreds of flames in the comments, because this movie is just praised because of how good it is. And there's nothing really I can say that add to the conversation about this movie that hasn't already been said before, because man, this movie is amazing. I love it. It's still one of Disney's best nearly 20 years later. And man, this movie deserves to be at near the top of this list because it's just that good, guys. Come on. There was no other place for this movie besides near the top. Let's be honest here. Once again, is anybody shocked with this placement? Yeah, much like Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, of course, is one of Disney's best. Bringing us into the top 5 is only right for this movie. Because, man, this movie, again, does everything right. And there's really nothing I can add to the conversation that hasn't already been said by thousands of other creators. Because, man, everything here is perfect. The songs, the characters, the animation, the emotion, everything works in Beauty and the Beast. Of course it's one of the best Disney movies ever created. And the fact that this is still, to this day, one of the only Disney movie that has been nominated for Best Picture. You heard me correctly, Best Picture. Not Best Animated Feature, Best Picture. That's how good this movie is, that it got that high of a praise. Because, man, this movie is just that good. And, man, bringing it into the top 5 is only right. And much like Lion King, this is most probably Disney's best critical film ever. But unfortunately, I just like 4 Disney movies better than Beauty and the Beast, so I can't put this one any higher. But, man, this movie is just phenomenal, masterpiece of cinema, and I think anything lower than number 5 would probably get me canceled, because it's just that good of a movie. But like I mentioned, it might be critically the best Disney movie, but I can't help but say that there are 4 movies that I think are better than Beauty and the Beast. At number 4, I have 101 Dalmatians. I've always been a super fan of this movie. One of the things that's always drawn me in with this movie specifically is the animation style. I love the look and feel of not only the characters, but the setting of this world. Like, honestly, I want to live in this sketchbook world because that's how good this movie looks. I love, of course, Pongo and Purdy. They're just such great characters to follow in this movie. There's a great story in this movie. And of course, I gotta talk about the villains. Cruella de Vil is not one of Disney's most famous villains is one of Disney's most famous villains for a reason. Because, man, she's just such a fun character. And once again, she's a character that steals the scene every time she's on screen, because that's how great she is. And of course, you pair with Jasper and Horace, who are such great goofy side villains that you can't help but not love. My only real complaints I do have with this movie that kind of justifies me putting it not any higher than number 4 is I do think that the human characters get a little shafted after the dogs get kidnapped, because of course we got to focus on the dogs tracking down their lost pups and finding them, while the human characters kind of get sidelined hard until the very end, which I'm not the hugest fan of. But other than that, this is again a 9-year perfect Disney movie, and while I've admitted it's probably worse than some of the movies we've already talked about, I can't help but put it higher than those movies because I would rewatch 101 Dalmatians, well, 100 times before I rewatch some of the movies we've already talked about. So I guess that means I gotta put it higher than those movies. I love this movie. It's great, and I still think it's one of Disney's best all this time later because, man, I can't help but love this movie. And now, taking home the bronze medal for my favorite Disney animated film is gonna go to The Great Mouse Detective. If there was any Disney movie that I felt was underrated, it would have had to have been this one. Because, man, this movie is so good, and I never see anybody talking about it. Because, man, I love this movie. Of course, I'm a huge fan of mystery films, so of course I'm a huge fan of a film like this. I just love Basil in general. He's such a fun character, and I like that he's another one of those archetypes where he's kind of a huge jerk at the beginning of the film, but grows into a better character by the end. I love all of the different characters we meet throughout the journey, and of course, Ratigan. Again, one of my favorite Disney villains, and I hardly see anybody talking about this guy because, man, he is such a fun, goofy villain that you can't help but not love. I love Ratigan. He is up there as one of my favorite Disney villains just because of everything he does. I love The Great Mouse Detective so much, and I don't see enough people talking about it because, man, it is more than earned the number 3 spot. And like I've mentioned, it might be worse critically than the movies we already talked about, but I would rewatch The Great Mouse Detective every day of the week before some of the Disney movies I've already talked about, even in the top 20. That's how you know I love this movie. This is just such a perfect Disney movie, and I can't help but not put it at number 3 because I just love the movie that much. Taking home our silver medal is another Disney movie I've always felt is underrated, and that is Meet the Robinsons. Of course, many of you will know because I've made a whole video glazing Back to the Future and the fact that it's my number 3 favorite film of all time. I love time travel movies, so of course I'm a huge fan of Meet the Robinsons, but I love the story of this movie so much, about how it's a story about loss, self-doubt, regret, and just feeling like you're not good enough. And I love that story for Lewis in this movie. He is one of my favorite Disney protagonists for that reason alone. I love the whole time travel storyline. I love the kooky Robinson family. They're so fun characters. And I love Bowler Hat Guy. Of course, he's meant to be the goofy villain that always screws up even the simplest of plans, and that's kind of why you love him, as you slowly start to find out that Doris is the one controlling everything, which kind of means that there's a great moment. And there's so many good moments in this movie about Bowler Hat Guy, his constant side gags that he goes on, and I love that they kind of treat Bowler Hat Guy so sympathetically in this movie, but they never make him a redeemed villain. He is just kind of left in the sides, and then he eventually gets a happy ending in the end because of Lewis going back in time. You have great moments throughout this movie, like Wilbur going back on his argument to bring Lewis back in time to find his mother because he values their friendship at the end of the film instead of at the beginning, and Lewis eventually making the decision not to talk to his mom. Man, that decision would speak so close to home. This movie is phenomenal to me. And of course, that when I most recently watched the ending, when that ending comes on and you have the Little Wonder song, man, that almost made me tear up because, man, I love that ending. I love Meet the Robinsons for a multitude of reasons. And again, it might not be the best critical Disney movie, but if I had to rank every Disney movie based on how likely I would be to rewatch it, this movie would still end up at number 2 because, man, I would rewatch this movie more than any other Disney movie besides my number 1 pick every day of the week if I had the option to, because, man, this movie just is peak Disney, and it's one of those Disney movies that I don't see many people talking about, and I just can't help but love it, and it takes home silver medal as my number 2 favorite Disney film. And taking home the gold medal as my favorite Disney animated film. Keep in mind, I said favorite, not critically the best Disney movie, but by far my favorite Disney movie goes to Wreck-It Ralph. I love this movie, and I always have ever since I first saw it in the theaters, because man, this movie speaks so close to home. Because I mean, like many of you might have known from some of my videos, I'm of course a gamer, so of course I'm gonna love the movie about kooky arcade characters that have a whole secret world, much like Toy Story, which of course I'm gonna love Wreck-It Ralph. I love Ralph's character in this movie, how he goes on this whole great arc to learn that even though he's coded to be a bad guy, he's not a bad person. And I love his arc. Of course, you've got Vanellope, who's again one of my favorite Disney characters, in this movie at least, of course. She is a great character as you slowly discover the backstory behind the kart race game. I love the side story with Felix Calhoun. It's a really fun side character. And King Candy is still to this day Disney's last good villain and Disney's only good twist villain, because they ran with a great arc of he is already the antagonist of the film before we get to his reveal, and his reveal that he's Turbo is just the icing on the cake for this movie story, because it just works. Of course, you've got a great soundtrack for this movie, great homages to many classic old arcade games, great soundtrack, great music, great themes, great voice acting. I could rewatch this movie more than any other Disney movie, and I'd still love it as number 1. Wreck-It Ralph to this day is still my favorite Disney film, and like I said, not the best Disney movie, but by far my favorite, so it comes in at number 1. So there you guys have it. My ranking of all 64 currently released Disney animated films. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to thank you guys for making it through this video for me. And thank you guys for an amazing year in 2025 for my channel. And I can't wait to bring you guys more content in 2026, because I already have a lot of great ideas for videos next year. And I already know, based on some of the movies I've already been looking at for next year, there's going to be a lot of good stuff to talk about next year already. And so I want to know right now, what is your ranking of the Disney films? If you don't want to rank all 64, because I totally understand that being hard, just give me what your top 5 would be and what your bottom 5 would be. And if you're up to the challenge, go ahead and rank all 64. I am really curious to see what people think about these movies, because these are some of the most popular animated movies in history. And again, while I'm not huge on the Disney Corporation, I still love it when Disney Animation pumps out a great banger, because man, I just love many of these Disney movies, as they're staples of my childhood. So, of course, I love talking about the Disney movies, much less the corporation. So, I'm a huge fan of Disney, and this video was a lot of fun for me to make, and I can't think of a more fitting closure to the year of 2025 for my channel. So, thank you guys all again for making it through this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope to see you guys all next year in my next video. Bye, guys.